I have this weird hobby. I like taking Snapchats in creepy places. It started as a joke, just something to freak out my followers. Most of the time, it's just shadows or weird lighting, but sometimes things don't add up. Tonight is one of those nights. I heard about it during lunch. A bunch of kids whispering about the old pet cemetery in Blackwood Hollow, about the cat lady. Decades ago, she lived alone, obsessed with her cats. When she died, she was buried with them. And now, they say she haunts the place, looking for new souls to take. People claim they hear meowing when there's no cat around, see glowing eyes watching them from the trees. It's too good to pass up. I drag Harper and Jake out with me. Harper protests the whole way, muttering about bad vibes, while Jake rolls his eyes, calling it all grade A horror movie stupidity. But I see the way Jake keeps glancing at Harper when he thinks I'm not looking, and the way Harper's voice shakes when she talks about Blackwood Hollow, like she knows more than she's saying. We reach the cemetery just after sundown. It's smaller than I expected. Rows of tiny headstones, some crumbling, others marked with little paw prints. The wind carries the faint smell of damp earth and something else, something stale, like dust and decay. Then I see it, a massive tombstone at the center, one word carved into the stone, Holloway. A shiver crawls down my spine, and I pull out my phone. Snap, nothing. Snap again, still nothing. I switch to night mode. The snap takes longer to load. The screen lags. Then, a notification pops up. Meow, look behind you. My stomach twists. I didn't type that. My breath turns shallow.
Guys, I didn't write this.
Harper snatches my phone, her hands trembling. Jake's face pales. This is a joke, right? Before I can respond, a low guttural meow echoes through the graveyard, then another and another. Glowing eyes blink from the shadows, dozens of them. The darkness shifts, slithering like something alive. The sound of scratching, of nails against stone, rises around us. Harper screams. Jake yells, "Run!" We bolt. My heart slams against my ribs as I sprint, my breath sharp and burning. The meows grow louder, almost human-like, turning into warped, distorted cries. The ground feels unsteady, like something is moving beneath us. I don't dare look back. We don't stop running until we crash into my front door, gasping, shaking. Inside, we slam the lock shut, panting in the quiet safety of my room. I pull out my phone with trembling fingers. The last snap is different. It's not the one I took. Instead, it's a grainy black and white photo of a woman. Her skin is sagging, her eyes hollow. She stands in the cemetery, surrounded by cats, their bodies pressed against her legs, staring, watching, and she's smiling. Harper's face drains of color.
I know her.
I whip my head toward her.
What?
She swallows hard.
My grandmother used to tell me stories about her. About a woman named Margot Holloway. People called her the Cat Lady. My grandma said she wasn't just some lonely woman. She practiced something dark. She believed she could steal time, extend her own life, by taking others.
Jake scoffs, but his voice wavers. That's insane.
Then explain the photo.
Harper snaps. I try to delete it. The app won't let me. I don't sleep that night. The next day at school, I can't shake the feeling of being watched. Every shadow in the hall seems darker, every whisper just out of earshot. I need answers. So I go to the library. Mrs. Holloway, the librarian, sits behind the counter, reading. Her silver hair is pulled back tight, her bony fingers turning pages methodically. When I ask about the pet cemetery, she freezes. Slowly, she looks up.
You shouldn't have gone there, dear.
Her voice is soft, almost affectionate, but something about her face, it feels familiar. A chill skates down my spine. Then my phone buzzes. A new snap from an unknown account. I hesitate, then tap to open it. It's the same black and white photo, but this time the old woman's smile is wider, and she's standing closer. My breath stutters, my fingers go numb. I look up at Mrs. Holloway. She's staring at me, her lips curl up, just slightly, and then she purrs. My phone slips from my hand. The air in the library turns thick, suffocating. The fluorescent lights buzz, flickering. The shadows stretch toward me, clawing at my feet. I stumble back. Her eyes, they're glowing. I turn and run. I don't stop, not until I'm outside, gulping the cold air, my hands shaking. Another notification. I don't want to look, but I do. The photo has changed again. The woman is closer still, and this time I'm in the picture too. A cat slinks past my feet, its tail curling around my ankle. I freeze. The meow it lets out isn't natural. It's low, guttural, almost like a laugh. My phone buzzes one last time. 9 lives, Elena. You only have one. The party was already chaotic when I got there. A bunch of us crammed into Tyler's basement, music blasting, neon lights flashing, and half-empty soda bottles and vape pens scattered everywhere. Someone had brought a bottle of peach schnapps, but no one was drinking. It wasn't about the booze tonight. It was about TikTok. Jacob was in the middle of the room, his phone propped up against a speaker. "All right, guys, you ready?" He grinned, holding up the bottle of Benadryl like it was some kind of trophy. "The syrup challenge!" Take way too much, wait for the hallucinations, and ride the high. Some people saw weird shapes. Others claimed they talked to dead relatives. But Jacob wanted to take it to the next level. "Bro, this is dumb," I muttered. "Are you sure about this?" He rolled his eyes. "Dude, I saw a guy on TikTok do 15 pills, and he was fine." He wasn't fine. I had seen the video. The guy looked like he was fighting invisible demons. But Jacob had already unscrewed the bottle cap. Someone whooped as he poured the thick pink syrup straight into his mouth. He chugged the full bottle like a pro. Some kids cheered. Some recorded a countdown. The rest of us just waited. And then we watched. At first, it was funny. Jacob giggled, eyes darting around the room like he was seeing things we couldn't. He swayed, blinking slow, his lips twitching into an off-kilter smile. "Yo," he mumbled. "Why is everything melting?" People laughed. Someone shoved a phone in his face. "Dude, what do you see?" Jacob frowned, his pupils blown wide. "Shadow people," he whispered. The room got quieter. His fingers twitched. Then, out of nowhere, he let out this sharp, strangled laugh that made the hairs on my arms stand up. "Oh my God!" he gasped, grabbing my wrist. "I can see the end!" I swallowed. "The end of what?" He stared right through me. "Everything." Minutes passed, but Jacob got worse. The laughing stopped. His breathing was weird, shallow, fast. His skin looked gray under the neon lights. Then he started muttering to himself, low and shaky, like he was having a conversation no one else could hear. "Dude, sit down," Tyler said, uneasy. Jacob ignored him. He was watching something only he could see. "They want me," he murmured. "Who?" someone joked, still filming. Jacob's face twisted. Suddenly, he screamed, a gut-wrenching animalistic scream. The room exploded into chaos. Someone dropped their phone. A girl shrieked. Jacob clawed at his arms like something was crawling under his skin. Then he bolted, straight upstairs, shoving people out of the way. "Jacob!" I ran after him. We found him in the backyard, staggering toward the house's edge, the 2-story drop looming beneath him. "Jacob, stop!" He turned, eyes glassy, a sick grin twisting his lips.
I wonder if I can fly.
And he stepped onto the ledge. The next few seconds blurred. I grabbed his arm. Tyler tackled him from the side. We yanked him down just as his foot slipped. He hit the ground, convulsing, foaming at the mouth. He started vomiting blood. Thick, dark red, pouring out like something had ruptured inside of him. His eyes bulged, bloodshot and wide, as if he saw something horrible lurking in the shadows around us. His hands clawed at his throat, choking on his own fluids. The veins on his forehead throbbed, looking like they were about to burst. Someone gagged. A girl screamed for someone to call 911, but the others kept filming, recording the way Jason spasmed, the way his body twitched violently against the cold grass, the way his lips turned black like he was rotting from the inside out. Some were laughing nervously, others whispering, but no one, not a single one, dropped their phones to help. I did. I dropped mine and grabbed his shoulders.
Jacob, stay with me, man!
His mouth opened, but no sound came out, just more blood. And then his body started jerking harder, his head smacking against the ground. His pupils shrank to pinpoints, his fingers twitching like broken marionette strings. A long, deep exhale, and stillness. By the time the ambulance arrived, Jacob was gone. They tried. The paramedics did everything they could, but there was nothing left to save. His body was limp, his lips were blue. His phone, still streaming live, was covered in vomit and dirt, a grotesque timestamp of his last moments. And then, like vultures, the videos went viral. Days passed, the world moved on. TikTok deleted the clips, but not before they racked up millions of views. People commented crying emojis, hashtags trended, parents held press conferences. TikTok issued a statement, all while another stupid challenge replaced this one. Jacob became a statistic, and his so-called friends, the ones who cheered him on, they moved on too. New parties, new dares, new content. Me? I visit his parents. Their house is quiet now, suffocatingly so. His mom sits by the window most days, staring outside as if waiting for her son to come home. His dad barely speaks. I bring flowers sometimes, but they just sit there, wilting, just like them. No one talks about Jacob anymore, not really. His friends barely mention him, and when they do, it's just a name, a headline, a tragedy, another warning no one will listen to. And I wonder, which way is this world heading? This happened last year right before my 23rd birthday. My best friend Viola and I had planned the perfect weekend, a simple trip to the Appalachian Mountains, a night in our camper van, and a sunrise hike before heading home. The forecast was clear, and our spirits were high as we set off, chatting and laughing as the mountain roads twisted higher. But things started going wrong as soon as we veered off the marked trail. The sky darkened almost instantly as heavy black clouds rolled. The wind began to buffet and howl across the trees, followed shortly by rain, cold and heavy enough to blind me to the outside world, which had become merely shades of gray. The meandering road was mushy with wet mud, and before we knew it, we were lost. It was into the night by the time the rains decided to stop. We parked under a tree. As I inhaled the damp earth clinging to the air, leaves dripping in the darkness, I knew it would be hard to build a fire for our planned barbecue. I exhaled in disappointment and said to Viola,
The ground's freaking wet. Or to remain inside the van and eat those Minutes Maid.
Viola popped a beer can and smiled at me.
At least we've got refreshments,
she said. Even though I smiled secretly, I fought down the strange shiver crawling across me. In some indescribable way, the woods felt wrong. Above the hoots of an owl, a reassuring hum from crickets below, wild howling from distant coyotes. But beneath those familiar sounds, something else lurked. rustlings which made my skin crawl, and whispers of motion. Then it came to me, the sound of footsteps. One quiet, unmistakable, slow, deliberate stride coming from very close behind the camper van. My breath caught. I turned to Viola, wide-eyed.
Did you hear that?
She barely looked up from the pan of sizzling beans.
Probably just an animal. A raccoon or something.
I wasn't so sure. I strained my ears, but the sound had stopped. Shaking my head, I sat back down and tried to focus on dinner. Viola must have sensed my tension, because as we ate, she decided to distract me with ghost stories.
You know, this mountain has a lot of urban legends. People disappearing, strange lights in the woods. And there's one about the shadow cat.
I fumbled.
Shadow cat?
She smirked.
It's a creature that stalks hikers. No one knows exactly what it looks like, but they say it has glowing yellow eyes and can mimic human voices to lure people away from the trail.
I shuddered, glancing outside at the shifting shadows between the trees.
Okay, stop. You're creeping me out.
She laughed, but was unable to complete her sentence when something black sped through the open window. A crow. It cannoned into our table, snapping its neck with a sickening crack. I screamed and shoved my chair back from the table. For a moment, its lifeless body tremored and finally became still. Then came a long, low growl that rumbled through the night, just beyond the camper van. Viola and I froze, staring at each other, almost paralyzed with fear.
Throw it outside. Now.
She whispered. I grasped the crow, its feathers damp and stiff under my fingers, and I hurled it out onto the yard. Then we locked every door, every window, and huddled in our sleeping bags, trying to ignore the lingering feeling of being observed. Eventually, the exertion of the day caught up to us and we fell asleep. I woke to Viola shaking me.
Kathy? Kathy! Wake up! Do you hear that?
I groggily sat up. A few seconds of eerie silence. Then I heard it too. A soft, rhythmic padding outside, circling us. A deep, throaty growl vibrated through the thin walls. Whatever it was big. Viola grabbed my wrist.
Don't move.
A thunderous pulse beat in my ears while we both stared out of the window. Then we saw them. Two glowing yellow eyes fixed on us through the glass. The eyes were simply too high up from the ground to belong to any normal animal. The thing did not blink. It only stared. My breath came in short, shallow gasps, while every muscle in my body screamed to run for my life. There was no place to run to. It disappeared as fast as it had come. Silence. 5 minutes crept by. Suddenly, out of nowhere, we heard a voice.
Kathy. Viola.
The voice was soft, lilting, like an affectionate mother calling for her daughters, but it came from the woods. The way she stretched the syllables too long, too slow, made my blood curl.
Kathy. Come outside.
Viola let out a choked sob.
Who is that? I don't know, and we won't answer. We're leaving as soon as the sun comes up. Till then, let's be quiet.
I replied nervously. We did not sleep that night. We stayed quiet, clutching each other and listening to the voice call our names over and over again. Someone even started scratching on our van, as if sharp fingernails clanked on our van's metal. It started from the back and dragged along the side, clawing at the door. My stomach twisted with the fear of death. The van rocked again. Something pushed against it. I put my hand over my mouth to stop myself from screaming. Viola trembled violently beside me. Another bang, then silence. The voice returned, now just outside the van.
Kathy. Let me in.
My entire body was trembling. Viola grabbed my hand, her nails digging into my skin.
Don't listen.
She whispered. Minutes dragged on for hours, and then, all of a sudden, as they began, the noises stopped. The voice diminished to a mere sound in the distance. At the first rays of sunlight filtering through the curtains, we did not dare to move. We piled our things into the front, started the van, and raced the mountains. I didn't have the courage to so much as look into the rearview mirror. Finally, I exhaled, relaxed my grip on the steering wheel at the time we reached the main road. Viola spoke first.
We're never coming back here.
I nodded, unable to shake the feeling that something was still watching us, hidden in the trees, waiting for the next lost travelers to whisper their names in the dark. Allegedly filmed in the Appalachian Mountains, the capturer of the clip claimed to have recorded a mysterious creature during a hiking trip. The Appalachian Mountains have long been a source of chilling urban legends and folklore, with tales of eerie encounters, missing people, and supernatural entities. A terrifying cryptid said to roam the Appalachian wilderness, the Wampus Cat, is a half-woman, half-cat creature with glowing yellow eyes. Legend says it was once a woman who spied on a sacred Cherokee ritual and was cursed to roam the mountains forever. Some hikers claim to hear eerie growls and see glowing eyes in the darkness. What do you think? I'd never been a believer of ghosts at any rate, but after my brother, Ren, died in that tragic car accident, I would have done anything to hear his voice one more time. Anything. That was how I found myself standing at the gates of Hachioji Cemetery, glancing at the damn phone booth I had previously spied on a late-night YouTube video. The grainy footage of some guy picking up the receiver with a shaking voice and muttering things about whispers, breathing, and voices calling his name. Some said the booth was haunted by a lady in white, while others claimed the dead could speak through it. I cared not about the myths. All I wanted was to speak to my brother. It was almost midnight. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth, which made the cold wind rustle through the trees and creak the branches like old bones. My hands began to tremor as I stumbled forward. Each step crunched on the gravel. Behind the glass panels, which were blurred from condensation, the booth looked vintage, streaked with something too much like fingerprints from inside. My stomach twisted. I inhaled deeply and pushed open the door. It creaked loudly, as if in protest against my presence. Inside was air that felt different, heavier with a compound of mildew and something metallic like rust or dried blood. My heartbeat raced as I picked the black receiver up. The line was dead. For a moment, there I was sitting, holding the phone and feeling absolutely silly about it. Surely this was no reality. The grief had driven me to such lengths where I got desperate enough to chase ghost stories. I would almost have laughed at myself when, all of a sudden, the static crackled. I froze. The half-familiar voice that came through was all but inaudible, just a thin breath of sound. My heart surged into my mouth. "Ren?" I whispered. Silence. Breathing, slow and labored. Some presence at the end. "Ren, it's me, Kylo. Are you there? Can you hear me?" It was static again, and then a voice that barely reached my ears was distorted, as if coming from the depths of the ocean. "Kylo." There was no mistaking it. That was him, twisted, stretched out, if one may think to measure it. "Ren? Ren, is that you? Where are you?" My fingers gripped the receiver tighter. It started with whispers, louder, more voices overlapping each other, urgently desperate. I couldn't tell what they were saying. Very unexplained fear coursed through my veins. Then, amid static, one phrase broke through. It was clear and incomprehensibly succinct. "Turn around." I sucked in my breath. My scalp tingled. I didn't want to. I couldn't. But there was some undeniable force within me, some primal, unreasonable terror. The cemetery trailed behind, headstones jutting out from the earth like jagged teeth. The trees swayed in the wind, their shadows shifted in length, and then I saw her. A woman in a flowing white dress stood not far from the graves and had her back toward me. Her hair covered her face, long and dark. My body was paralyzed. Everything screamed for me to run, but my feet just kept standing. The phone was still against my ear. All the whispers turned into shrill, unnatural wailings. The woman jerked. I dropped the receiver, the glass panels of the booth rattling violently as if something had been thrown against them from inside. I stumbled back, my breath coming in quick and shallow gasps. The woman turned. Her face, her eyeballs were dangling from her eye socket, almost touching her cheeks. Her mouth was stretched to an unnatural width, lips pulling back to expose teeth too sharp, too many. She pounced. I fell backward onto the gravel, shaking as she screeched, shattered air with her piercing high voices. The world around me blurred, my heartbeat pounded heavily in my ears. And then, she was gone. The booth was now silent, with the receiver dangling from its cord back and forth. The thudding in my chest sped up as I quickly stood up. The whispers receded, the winds abated. I was never alone again. A voice from behind me, familiar and broken.
Kylo, why didn't you save me?
I turned to see my brother, the body torn and tattered by the crash. He had no more eye sockets. Nothing. Darkness. When I opened my eyes, I was gasping for breath like I had just finished a 5-mile sprint. Broken was how I felt. A stench of decay permeated the air. It felt like the walls were closing in on me. My heart began to race when I realized I was trapped inside the booth. The door was locked. The receiver dangled, limp from its cord, as if it had just been used. I gathered every bit of strength to stand and slowly attempt to push against the door. It wouldn't budge. At that moment, I began to feel the first touches of panic.
No, no, no!
I cried out in disbelief, pounding with fists against the glass. And just then, the lady in white stood outside the door. This time, though, she was not far away. She was just beyond a few feet, looked me straight in the eye through a glass panel. Her soulless black eyes bore into mine. Pale, bony fingers touched the glass. My scream caught in my throat. She stood there and smiled wickedly, slowly, as her loosened lips parted to reveal a mouth without any humanity.
Kylo,
She sang creepily, sending a chill up my spine.
stay.
No, no, let me out!
I screamed. She tilted her head, amusement in her expression. Then she blew onto the glass, and her breath formed words that chilled my very marrow.
You belong to me.
And then the telephone rang, loud and clear. I turned around, the hand shaking now, with the antique rotary glowing faintly. The number blurred in front of me as if the wild had moved closer. Written on the receiver, Kylo scratched as if done with a fingernail. I drew a breath. With shaking fingers, I turned back to the woman in white. She was gone. Some kind of omen insidiously crept into my mind, saying that I was nowhere close to being alone. The ringing stopped. Then the receiver lifted, slowly, on its own. And the voice at the other end was no longer a whisper. It was clear now, familiar.
Kylo.
And now it was Ren's voice, no longer warped. It was soft. It was broken.
I need you to let go.
Tears filled my eyes and started threatening to spill out.
Ren, I'm so sorry.
I know, he whispered, but you can't stay. You need to go, now. Then the phone clicked. The air shifted. The door swung open all by itself. I didn't hesitate this time. I was running now that I was free from the cemetery, burnt inside, inhaling air into my lungs. When I turned back, the booth was nothing. The cemetery was silent, as if it entirely swallowed it there. To this day, I don't know if I ever really left. Some nights, there's the ringing of the phone. Some nights, I dream of a woman in white standing near my window, watching, waiting. Sometimes, only sometimes, I hear her calling me.
Kylo.
The Hachioji Cemetery phone booth case is a chilling urban legend from Japan. It revolves around a mysterious phone booth located in Tokyo's Hachioji Cemetery, where visitors reportedly receive eerie calls from unknown numbers. Some claim to hear whispers, static, or even voices of deceased loved ones on the line. According to legend, a woman once answered the ringing phone and was later found dead under unexplained circumstances. Paranormal enthusiasts believe the booth is a gateway between the living and the dead. Though no official records confirm the deaths, the unsettling stories persist, keeping the mystery alive. I never expected my train ride home to turn into a nightmare. It was a cold evening and the train was packed with tired commuters, lost in their phones or staring blankly at the floor. I had taken this route 100 times before, just another ordinary night in the city. But this time, something felt off. I first noticed him standing near the middle of the train car, a tall, rough-looking man with wild eyes and a nervous energy that made my skin crawl. His hands twitched at his sides, and his lips moved as if he were whispering to himself. At first, I thought he was just another troubled soul, someone lost in his own world. But then I saw where his attention was focused. 2 young women sat nearby, speaking softly to each other. One of them wore a hijab, her dark eyes darting nervously toward the man. He was staring at her, his face twisted in something between a sneer and a smirk. Then I heard it. Low, ugly murmurs. I couldn't make out the words, but I saw the way the girl shrank back, pressing closer to her friend. Her hands trembled as she gripped the strap of her bag. Something inside me tightened. The train clattered along the tracks, the fluorescent lights above flickering for a moment. The man leaned in closer to the girl, his voice still too low for me to hear, but his body language said enough. She was terrified. And then, without warning, he shoved her. She yelped as she hit the floor, her hands slamming against the hard surface of the train. Her friend gasped, bending down to help her. The entire train car went silent, the air thick with shock. I felt my body move before my mind even caught up. "Hey!" I shouted, stepping forward. "What the hell is wrong with you?" The man turned to me slowly, as if I had just interrupted something important. His lips curled into a lazy grin. "Mind your own business," he muttered. My fists clenched. "You just assaulted her. Apologize." He snorted. "Why should I? She doesn't belong here anyway." That did it. Before I could say anything else, 2 other men in the train stood up beside me. One was older, in his 50s maybe, with tired eyes but a strong stance. The other was younger, in a business suit, his jaw tight with anger. "Leave him alone," the older man said, his voice calm but firm. "You're harassing people," the younger one added. "You need to stop." The man's grin faded. His eyes flitted between the 3 of us, calculating. The train rocked as it sped through the tunnel, the windows reflecting our tense standoff. "Big heroes, huh?" the man muttered. "Think you can tell me what to do?" The tension was thick, ready to snap. My pulse pounded in my ears. The other passengers were frozen, some clutching their bags, others pretending not to see what was happening. Then, everything exploded. A glint of metal. Before I could react, pain ripped through my side. My breath hitched as I stumbled backward, a sharp burning sensation spreading through my stomach. He had a knife. I barely had time to process it before he turned on the older man. A quick, brutal stab to the chest. Blood bloomed on his shirt. He gasped, eyes wide, and collapsed onto a seat. "No!" the old man screamed. The younger man tried to run, but the attacker was fast. The knife slashed across his throat in one horrifying motion. He fell instantly, his body crumpling to the floor. I pressed a shaking hand to my stomach, my fingers wet with blood. My legs felt weak, the world tilting around me. The train car erupted into chaos. People screamed, scrambling to the far end of the train, some trying to pry open the doors. The 2 girls huddled together, sobbing, their faces pale with shock. The attacker stood there, chest rising and falling, his knife dripping red onto the floor. His eyes flicked around, wild and unfocused. He wasn't done. My vision swam, but I forced myself to move. I had to stop him. With whatever strength I had left, I lunged at him. My shoulder slammed into his side, sending him stumbling back. He growled in frustration, swinging the knife wildly, but I dodged, just barely. He wasn't expecting me to fight back. I grabbed his arm, trying to wrench the knife away, but he was strong, too strong. He shoved me hard and I hit the metal pole behind me, my ribs screaming in pain. The train screeched as it neared the next station. The lights flickered again, and then red and blue lights flashed outside. Cops. The train door slid open, and officers stormed in, guns drawn. "Drop the weapon, now!" For a moment, the man just stood there, his chest heaving, the knife still clutched in his bloody hand. Then, like a trapped animal, he lunged toward the door. A gunshot rang out, not a fatal shot, just a warning. The man froze. The cops tackled him to the ground in seconds, wrestling the knife from his grip. Handcuffs snapped around his wrists. It was over. I don't remember much after that. My body gave up and everything blurred. I woke up in a hospital bed, the sterile white walls too bright, the steady beep of machines filling the silence. The nurse told me I had survived, barely. The knife had missed my vital organs by inches. The other two men, they weren't so lucky. Ricky and Daniel, those were their names. Two ordinary men who had just wanted to help, who had stood up for what was right, and they had lost their lives because of it. The news covered the story for weeks. They called it a hate crime. The man, his name was Charles Barker, had a history of violence, of extremist beliefs. He had boarded the train looking for trouble, and he had found it, but so had we. I still think about that night, about the two men who never made it home, about the two girls who were just trying to exist in a world that saw them as different. I survived, and as long as I'll live, I'll make sure people remember what happened that night, because hate only wins when good people stay silent, and we didn't. On May 26, 2017, Jeremy Joseph Christian carried out a brutal attack on a Max light rail train in Portland, Oregon. Christian, known for his extremist views and history of violent behavior, began harassing two teenage girls, one wearing a hijab, shouting racist and Islamophobic slurs. Three men, Taliesin Muirden, Namkai Mesh, Ricky John Best, and Micah Fletcher, intervened to protect the girls. Without warning, Christian pulled out a knife and stabbed all three men. Taliesin and Ricky suffered fatal wounds and died at the scene, while Micah survived with serious injuries to his neck. Christian fled the train but was arrested shortly after. During his trial, Christian showed no remorse, making racist outbursts in court. In 2020, he was convicted of murder, attempted murder, and hate crimes, receiving a life sentence without parole. The attack was widely condemned as an act of hate-fueled violence, highlighting the dangers of extremism.
Last year, hype over that TikTok app was at its peak, so I foolishly decided to see what the big deal was. Don't get me wrong, some of the surface stuff was pretty cool. All the little dance routines and lip-sync videos kept me entertained for a while, but I think I went a little too deep down the rabbit hole because I found just about the creepiest trash I'd ever come across. I'm not even sure how I found this guy. I mean, like I said, I was just tapping and scrolling, going further and further down my TikTok rabbit hole, but somehow I ended up watching a video of this guy with glasses and a handlebar mustache saying stuff like, "Good morning, my queen's above 18. So, as you can imagine, right away I'm all like, what in God's name is this mess? I scroll through his TikToks a little before coming across another video from this guy, the King, where he greets people with queens above 18. First of all, who says stuff like that? But second, the guy was obsessed with the idea of his queens being above 18. Like anyone who talks about it that much is definitely a little sus. But then the video goes on showing him asking all of his queens to do something called the King Challenge. which turned out to be nothing more than getting girls to wear a white t-shirt and having them pour water down the front of their shirts. I'm not kidding. That's all the King Challenge involved. It was just the creepy way he tried to sound almost fatherly about it too. Like, I swear to God, at one point, he even said, like, try to make it fun. Make a little game out of it, my queens. Just everything about this guy screamed absolute creep, and I was barely surprised when I saw that he'd replied to a comment asking, "Why have you been talking to my 16-year-old girlfriend?" or something like that. So, as you can tell, TikTok is on thin ice already. I'm already kind of jaded with social media in general, purely for the number of creeps that use it, and that's on top of the fact that social media is super bad for your mental health. Like, I don't want anything on my phone that makes me feel terrible or creeps me out. Then, I'm not kidding, like 5 minutes later, I'm scrolling through some of the less popular dance TikToks when I come across the video that made me go, I'm out. It starts off with this old dude like crouched down, propping his phone against something to record himself. So at first, all you see is this dude's wrinkles. And then as the guy steps away from the phone, you see his bare foot with jeans on. Then there's nothing on his upper half but what I'm guessing was one half of an extra small girl's bathing suit, like the tube top kind. He then starts doing these creepy hand dances while growling completely inaudible words underneath his breath, all in what looked a lot like the basement of a serial killer. All I could think was that his little dance routine might be the last thing I see before he bashes my skull in or something, and this cold shiver just runs right through me. I get that apps like TikTok make people happy and bring people together and all that good stuff. I honestly get that. But to me, social media has always been this glimpse into how petty, immature, and downright frightening human beings can sometimes be. So yeah, TikTok, it's gonna be a no from me, dog.
I never thought my past would come back to haunt me like this. Not here, not now, not with his face grinning from every headline, those dead fish eyes staring through the screen as if they could still dissect me. It started like any other monotonous day at work, if you could call the suffocating heat of the bakery's ovens and the reek of burnt sugar.
Monotony.
The industrial fans groaned like dying animals, their blades slicing through air thick with the cloying sweetness of caramelizing dough. My apron clung to me, damp with sweat and flour, as I loaded tray after tray into the oven's glowing jaws. Timothy Bass drifted through the haze like smoke, always watching, never blinking. His boots squeaked against the linoleum in a rhythm that matched the pulse throbbing in my throat. He'd materialize behind the women, always the women, his breath a wet rasp against their necks as he
Reached for a muffin.
or
Adjusted the thermostat.
once I caught him sniffing the chair where Janine had been sitting, his nostrils flaring like a hound's, fingertips digging into the vinyl until it crackled. When I froze, a tray trembling in my hands, he turned slowly, smiled. His teeth were too white, too straight, as if they'd been filed to points. "Something wrong?" he asked, tilting his head like a curious predator, the scar on his left cheek thin, surgical, a pale worm buried under stubble, twitched as he spoke. I shook my head, my tongue glued to the roof of my mouth, but I knew the way prey knows the shadow circling overhead isn't just a cloud. It wasn't until years later, scrolling through cold case files at 3 a.m. while my husband snored oblivious beside me, that I saw her name again. The screen's blue light carved hollows into the dark, and there she was, Mandy, her senior photo glowing like a ghost. Acme, Washington, 1989. A girl so vibrantly alive she seemed to burn through the pixelated image. Wild auburn curls, freckles like scattered cinnamon, eyes the fierce green of summer leaves before they rot. A track star, a fighter, the kind of girl who'd laugh as she outran the boys. Her German shepherd Duke loping at her heels like a tawny shadow, until November 24th. She had gone for a jog with her German shepherd, a routine run, something she had done 100 times before. But on that fateful November day, she didn't come home. Her dog returned alone, its fur damp, its eyes wild. Something was wrong. Something unholy had taken root in the small town, and its name had no face. Not yet. 3 days later, 2 fishermen found Mandy. The Nooksack River had peeled her to horror, its icy fingers probing every wound, every violation. Her skin was the color of a week-old bruise, lips parted in a silent scream, hair tangled with twigs and riverweed like a crown of thorns. They'd pulled her onto the bank, and one of the men vomited into the shallows. Bruises bloomed across her legs in the shape of grasping hands. Crescent moon cuts scored her palms. From her own nails, the coroner would say, as she clawed at her attacker's face. But the worst was her eyes. Wide open, clouded, hungry, as if death hadn't stopped her from searching for the monster who'd done this. The town unraveled. Porch lights burned through the night. Fathers cleaned shotguns at kitchen tables. Mothers checked closets before bed. Reverend Cole preached about the devil walking among them, his spit flecking the pulpit as he snarled, "Look to your neighbors!" For weeks, the only footprints in the autumn mud belonged to detectives and grieving parents. Then the snow came, burying leads, burying hope, burying Mandy in a polished casket too small for her laughter. The case froze, buried, forgotten, until 2017, until Detective Bohey, all nicotine and caffeine and rage, thawed it with a DNA test, until I sat in a too-cold interrogation room, my breath fogging the two-way mirror, and whispered,
Timothy Bass.
I told them everything, how he'd linger by the time cards, memorizing schedules, how he'd hum Sweet Child of Mine while scrubbing blood, chicken blood, he claimed, from the meat slicer. Once, after Mandy's face flashed on the break room TV, he'd sighed. Pretty thing, bet she was wild up to the end. His tongue darted out, lizard quick, catching a drop of coffee on his lip. The cops found the soda can in his garbage, buried under a rat's nest of Hustler magazines and frayed ropes. A Pepsi from 1989, its logo faded, dented as if kicked in a rage. They told me the DNA was a
statistical miracle.
Saliva on the rim, skin cells in the grooves, a map of guilt etched in double helixes. The trial was a circus of horrors. Timothy's lawyer painted Mandy as a free-spirited teen who'd explored the woods with a secret lover. The gallery erupted. Mr. Stavik lunged, howling, until bailiffs dragged him out. Timothy just smiled, fingers steepled, watching me from the bench. I felt those fingers on my throat, in my hair, snap. When the prosecutor displayed the Coke bottle, the one found near Mandy's body, its glass smeared with Timothy's sweat, I gagged. The courtroom tilted. For a heartbeat, I was in those woods, the air thick with the stench of crushed ferns and copper, her screams clotting in my lungs. The jury deliberated for 8 hours. When the foreman spat,
Guilty.
Timothy finally moved. He leaned toward me, cuffs clinking, and mouthed, "You're next." They gave him 27 years. 27 years for stealing a lifetime, for turning a river into a tomb. The judge called it closure, but closure is a myth sold to the grieving. There's no coffin heavy enough to crush the what-ifs. Now I dream of her, not the Mandy in the photos, but the other Mandy, the one the river made. Her skin sloughs off in translucent ribbons, lips nibbled by crawdads, eye sockets teeming with leeches. She runs, but her legs buckle, tendons snapping like rotten rubber bands. The woods creak and moan, branches knitting into a cage. Behind her, footsteps, heavy, relentless, a whistle, Sweet Child of Mine, off-key and dripping malice.
Help me.
She gurgles, river water geysering from her throat.
Why didn't you help me?
I wake screaming, my sheets soaked in November rain. My husband murmurs, "Nightmare?" and rolls over. He doesn't understand. They never do. In 1989, 18-year-old Mandy Stavik disappeared while jogging near her home in Acme, Washington. Her body was found in the Nooksack River 3 days later. Despite an extensive investigation, the case went cold for nearly 30 years. In 2017, detectives used forensic genealogy to identify Timothy Bass, a former neighbor, as a suspect. DNA recovered from Bass's discarded Coke can matched evidence from the crime scene. He was arrested and convicted of murder, receiving nearly 27 years in prison. The case was groundbreaking for its use of genetic genealogy in solving decades-old crimes. I can still recall the initial time I met him, Dr. Larry Nasser, a name that ought to stand for safety, healing, and trust, turned out to be a nightmare from which I can never awaken. I was only 15, a talented gymnast, my days a whirl of chalk on my hands, searing routines, and an endless quest for perfection. My aspirations were ingrained in the shine of gold medals and deafening applause. I believed in the coaches who trained me and the schools that promised to protect my future. It was a fragile thing, though I didn't realize it then. The Michigan State University clinic towered like a cathedral of hope. I'd heard whispers of athletes revived under Nasser's treatment, torn ligaments repaired, spines corrected, careers saved. My coach, a woman with a clipboard always clutched in her hand, had nodded curtly when I groaned through a vault drill.
Go see Larry.
She'd instructed.
He'll get you fixed up.
Her tone brooked no argument. The waiting room smelled of ammonia and ambition. Framed newspaper clippings adorned the walls. Olympians mid-flight, their bodies coiled like springs. A girl beside me, maybe 13, clutched a stuffed bear, her leg bouncing nervously. I wondered if her stomach churned like mine. When the nurse came and called me, I trailed after her down a clean white corridor. My leotard stuck to me, the fabric still wet from practice. His office was a shrine to himself, awards that shone like teeth. Pictures of beaming girls paused in perpetuity. He rose when I walked in, his smile disarmingly warm. "Welcome," he said, as though welcoming a visitor. "Let's see what we can do for the pain," he said. Then he put on gloves. The examination table was cold beneath my thighs. He hummed as he worked, a tuneless sound that filled the silence. At first, his touch was clinical, probing the knot in my lower back. But then his hands slid lower, fingers grazing the edge of my uniform. My breath hitched. He paused, tilting his head. "Just checking for muscle tension," he explained, his voice smooth as oil. I nodded, teeth digging into my lip. This is what healing feels like, I chastised myself. But his hands delved deeper. The world spun, my heartbeat in my ears. Was this normal? Was I dreaming it? He smiled softly, taking notes on a clipboard. "You're doing great." The compliment was a yoke. I gazed at the ceiling, tallying water spots until he finally moved away. "We'll have to have weekly sessions," he said, patting my knee, "to avoid further damage." The second appointment was worse. No gloves today, no clipboard. His hands bare and greasy with lotion, pressed down on me before I could breathe. "Relax," he whispered. "This'll ease your hip alignment." My mother sat 6 feet away, turning the pages of a People magazine. A towel draped over Nasser's wrist hid her view. I stared at a poster of the Olympic rings on the wall, their colors running together as tears pricked. A man who had sworn an oath to heal was breaking me apart from the inside out. Then I staggered to the parking lot, my legs shaking. My mother squeezed my shoulder and asked whether I was feeling better or not. I smiled weakly.
Yeah, much.
The shame fermented in silence. During practice, I winced when coaches made me change my stance. At night, I scrubbed my skin raw under the shower, the water burning. I said nothing to anyone, because who was I to question a man so respected, so admired? But the cracks widened. In the locker room, a teammate grumbled about
Strange treatments.
We didn't look at each other. Our shame was a mutual secret. Years later, I discovered she'd been seeing him too, her file as thick as mine. By 2016, the rumors became a roar, an investigative piece, a police report, a hashtag. When I called the prosecutor's office, my hands shook so hard that I misdialed twice. The woman on the phone was patient.
Take your time.
She said, but time was already lost to us. The backlash was swift. Attention seeker, they called me online. Troublemaker, sneered a former coach. My family's mailbox brimmed with letters accusing me of lying, yet with each survivor who came forward, her voice trembling over Zoom calls, her story mirroring mine, the weight lessened. Voices that had been silenced for decades finally screamed. In court, we were a mosaic of grit, power-dressing former Olympians, adolescents with orthodontia, and mothers holding pictures of daughters who took their own lives. When I stood up, the air was charged with all the breath collectively held. Nasser looked down at his handcuffed hands, but I addressed the judge, the cameras, the girl that I was. Judge Aquilina's eyes never left his. Sentence upon sentence stacked up. 40 years, 60, 175. The room breathed out.
I just signed your death warrant.
She said, and for the first time, I felt the shackles ease. We met in the courthouse lobby afterward, embracing like survivors of a wreck. A reporter asked if we had forgiven him. I shook my head. Forgiveness wasn't the issue. This was about rewriting the ending. Now, when I train young gymnasts, I observe the flinch at the approach of a stranger, the pause before the high five. We practiced protocols, no treatments in the absence of a guardian, and no secrets from parents. They roll their eyes, but I do not relent. Nasser's sentence is a life. Ours is a lifetime. The nightmares persist. His breath hot in my ear, the creak of the exam table. But they're softer now. At rallies, we pass the microphone like a baton, each voice a torch. The truth is terrifying. It's also our armor. We were girls who wanted to fly, but he clipped our wings. We were champions, but he made us feel powerless. No more. Today, we tell our stories. Today, we are heard. And today, we ensure that no other girl ever has to whisper in the darkness, wondering whether she will ever be believed. The world now knows the truth. And the truth is horrifying. The Larry Nasser case is one of the most notorious abuse scandals in sports history. Nasser, a former USA gymnastics and Michigan State University doctor, was exposed for abusing hundreds of young athletes under the guise of medical treatment. His crimes spanned decades, with many victims being elite gymnasts, including Olympic champions like Simone Biles, Allie Reisman, and Michaela Maroney. In 2016, survivors came forward, leading to an investigation that uncovered Nasser's long history of abuse and institutional cover-ups. In 2017 and 18, he was convicted on multiple charges, receiving a prison sentence of up to 175 years. During his sentencing, over 150 survivors delivered powerful victim impact statements, exposing systemic failures that allowed his crimes to continue. The case led to widespread reforms in USA Gymnastics and Michigan State University, as well as a national reckoning on protecting athletes from abuse. I will regret buying the doll till the day I die. I was just a boy, no older than 15 when I saw it in a small curio shop outside Sapporo. My little sister Okiku had desired a doll for ages. Every time one was on display in a show window, wide-eyed and open-mouthed, fair envy filled her heart. Not that we were wealthy or anything. Nevertheless, I'd been saving for weeks, determined to treat her. The doll was a beautiful little handmade figure dressed in a silk kimono with bright black hair and lifelike glassy-looking eyes. Even I felt the doll was just perfect. From the moment I placed it in her hands, Okiku adored it. She named it after herself and carried it with her everywhere. She conversed with the doll, shared her bed with it, and donned it in a little dress she stitched herself. Sometimes I felt like she loved the doll more than she loved me, but I could take that. Seeing her happy was enough. Then, Okiku died. It was all too sudden day. She would frolic in the garden, laughing with the doll in her arms. The next, bedridden with a high fever. My parents did everything they could, but in the end, it was useless. No doctor could save her. She was gone for a week. The house felt silent. It was an ominous blanket of sorrow. In their grief, my parents placed Okiku's beloved doll before the family altar in her memory, and that was when the nightmare began. It was subtle at first. As I happened by the altar, I told myself that I saw the doll's glassy eyes follow me. Once, I thought its lips parted just slightly, as though it were whispering something I couldn't hear. The feeling of being watched never left me. One night, while I'd lie in bed, I heard a noise by the altar. It was delicate, reminiscent almost of fluttering footsteps. My heart pounded in an animalistic rhythm as I couldn't make heads or tails out of what I had just heard, till giggling. Okiku's giggling. I sprang upright. My skin had turned into a pool of sweat. Surely it was a dream. I forced myself to breathe and calm down, but it came again, this time closer. I turned towards the altar. The moonlight from the window fell onto the doll and turned what remained of my breath into an icy chill. Its hair was longer. By morning, I'd convinced myself it had always been that way. Dolls do not grow hair. That's impossible. Still, in the direct subsequent weeks, the hair crept downward, strand by strand, inch by inch. First, it reached to its shoulders, and then there were antennae below the waist. Even my mother, in deep mourning, noticed it. She trembled at the touch of those unnaturally soft strands.
It's just your imagination,
she whispered, sounding as if she didn't believe it, but I knew better. One night, I took my growing fear to its limit. I took a pair of scissors and, trembling, cut a piece of the doll's hair. The severed strands fell, fluttering to the floor. I breathed in relief. There, see? Just the doll, just an illusion of my imagination. The next morning, I nearly screamed out when I saw it. The hair had grown back. After that, the doll started harassing me. Its whispers kept becoming clearer and clearer. I began walking at night with a feeling of fingers dancing on my cheek, only for nothing but a soft whisper in reply. Objects would move themselves in the house. The air turned foul with the smell of decay. And then, the dreams. In my dreams, Okiku was seen in the garden with the doll in her arms. Her face was white, with deep hollows for eyes. She whispered to me, but I couldn't catch her words. Slowly, she turned the face of the doll towards me. Its smile curved, grotesque, unnatural grin. I raised the scream. By then, my parents were convinced something was really wrong. My mother began covering the doll with cloth, only somehow it still emanated a feeling of presence. Something was troubling about it, not just the hair itself, but it felt alive. In short, it felt wrong. That night, I woke up, gasping for breath. It was as if something small pressed its palm onto my chest. Breathing became a chore, and my vision blurred. I swore that I saw the doll set at the foot of the bed, tilting its head ever so slightly, and just before I blacked out, I heard a whisper.
Oki. Oki.
The next morning, my parents took the doll to a priest, who took our story with a very composed face. Yet, after examining the doll, his face blanched. "This isn't just a doll," he whispered. "It is a vessel." He explained that my sister's spirit may have attached itself to the doll and wouldn't move on. The hair growing, its whispering, the twisted events that continued was all Okiku trying to get reached. "The doll must be placed under divine protection," he said. "It cannot be destroyed." So we did the only thing we could. We left it at Menenji Temple. The priest took it in, promising to take care of it and perform rituals to appease Okiku's restless spirit. We've tried our best to forget. I moved away, built a new life, and repeatedly tried to convince myself there was no pure evil in it at all, just a figment of childhood imagination. Yet that was years ago. Yet I still can't escape. I hear so many stories. The priests who keep cutting the doll's hair, which grows back non-stop. Visitors claim to see the eyeballs move and the lips curve. Others even say they can hear a hint of giggle echoing in the prelate halls at night. Some nights I wake up gasping for breath. I hear her whispers.
Okay.
I so wish that I had never bought that doll. I so wish I hadn't given it to my sister, because now I know Okiku never left. She never will. The Okiku doll is a famous haunted artifact in Japan. According to legend, a boy named Ikichi Suzuki bought the doll for his younger sister, Okiku, in Hokkaido. She adored it, but tragically died soon after. Her family placed the doll on an altar in her memory. Over time, they noticed its hair growing, despite trimming it. Convinced it housed Okiku's spirit, they entrusted it to Manenji Temple, where it remains today. The doll's hair continues to grow, baffling scientists. Some believe Okiku's spirit lingers, making the doll an enduring figure in paranormal folklore. I was just goofing around with the guys in the school corridor when a sharp, shrill scream cut through the air. Heads turned, phones came out, and a crowd was forming near the lockers. I recognized that voice instantly. It was the queen of mean girls, Amaya.
Are you blind or just stupid?
She yelled, her manicured fingers clutching the front of a timid girl's hoodie. Pearl, the quiet girl from my English class, the one nobody really noticed. I pushed through the crowd just in time to see Amaya shove her back. Pearl stumbled but caught herself, her hands trembling. A dark stain spread across Amaya's designer top, her spilled caramel macchiato dripping down in thick, sticky streaks.
It was an accident.
Pearl mumbled, her voice nervous but honest.
An accident?
Amaya's voice went up an octave.
You ruined my top, you little rat. Do you even own clothes that cost more than $10? Oh wait, let me guess. Thrift store special?
Laughter rippled through the crowd. Pearl looked up, a flash of defiance in her usually downcast eyes.
At least I don't have to buy my friends to make myself feel important.
A collective gasp. Even I couldn't help but let out a, "Oh, damn!" Amaya's face twisted in fury. Her hand shot up, aiming to slap Pearl, but before it could land, I grabbed her wrist. "Cut it out, Amaya," I said, keeping my voice firm. "It was an accident. Drop it." Her eyes flared with disbelief.
Are you seriously taking her aside right now?
"I'm saying you're making a scene. Let it go." She yanked her arm away, let out an exasperated scoff, and stormed off. The crowd dispersed, but not before some kids whispered and chuckled at the showdown. I turned to Pearl, who was still standing there, fingers gripping the hem of her hoodie. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded, avoiding my eyes.
Thanks for that.
That was the first time we really talked. Over the next few weeks, Pearl and I started hanging out. Turns out, she was cool. Funny in a sarcastic way. She had this dry, sharp wit that always caught me off guard. One weekend, we went to the beach, filmed a TikTok, just messed around in the waves. I posted it, no big deal, except it became a big deal. The next day at practice, I caught sight of Amaya marching across the gym, straight toward Pearl, who was sitting on the bleachers.
You really think you're something, don't you?
Amaya spat. Pearl raised a brow.
Oh no, my evil plan has been exposed. I befriended Mervyn just to ruin your life.
Amaya's nostrils flared.
Stay away from him. He's mine.
Oh, I didn't realize people were property now. My bad.
Amaya lunged, but I stepped between them, again. "What's your problem?" I snapped at Amaya. Her expression shifted. She blinked innocently.
Can we just talk?
Alone?
I sighed, rubbing the back of my neck. Fine. As we walked away, she reached for my hand. I didn't pull away fast enough. Over my shoulder, I saw Pearl watching, her expression unreadable. The next day, neither Amaya nor I were at school. Then came the TikTok. Amaya posted it, her in a luxurious pool, me beside her. The caption? He finally asked me to prom. #power couple. #sorry not sorry. It all happened so fast that I barely got time to react. My phone exploded with notifications. Pearl didn't text, didn't call. I should have known something was wrong. The night before prom, my phone buzzed. It was Pearl. Her voice was shaky.
Mervin, I need your help.
What? What's wrong?
I'm in trouble. I sent you my location. Please come.
My heart pounded. The location pin dropped in my messages. An abandoned construction site on the outskirts of town. When I got there, it was dead silent. The skeletal frame of an unfinished building loomed against the night sky. My flashlight flickered over cracked concrete and rusted beams. And then, I saw her. Pearl was sitting on the ground, facing the corner of a broken wall, her back towards me. Her shoulders shook as she sobbed uncontrollably. Pearl? Is everything all right? No response. I stepped closer. My flashlight beam landed on something beside her, and I froze. It was Amaya, only she wasn't breathing anymore. Her mouth was grotesquely stuffed with crumpled dollar bills and coins. Her wide, unseeing eyes were frozen in horror, bulging from their sockets. Her nails were broken, her fingers twisted, as if she had tried to claw something, anything. I gagged, stepping back. Pearl's sobbing turned into laughter. She turned to face me, and my stomach dropped. Her face, she was smiling, but her eyes were wet with tears, her cheeks streaked with smudged mascara. She looked unhinged.
You see, Mervin, she tried to buy you. With money, with fake love. So I fed her as much money as she could take. Until she choked on it.
I stumbled backward. Pearl, what did you do?
I made things right.
She cocked her head, grinning.
Now we can be together. Free of her poison. Just you and me.
A sickening chill crawled up my spine. I reached for my phone, hands shaking, and called the cops. The last thing I saw before they dragged her away was Pearl's face, still smiling, still crying, and still whispering my name.
Mervin. Mervin.
I used to love Snapchat. The streaks, the filters, the late-night gossip and vanish mode with Ruby and Jace. It felt safe, like a secret diary no one could read. But that was before the messages started, before Fiona vanished, before I realized that someone had been watching us through our own screens. The first message came at 9:34 p.m., just as I was walking home from Ruby's. A snap from an unknown sender.
See you in 10.
Weird. The photo was blurry, just an outline of someone walking alone. Then I looked closer. My stomach dropped. It was me. I stopped mid-step, my breath hitching. The sidewalk was empty, the streetlights buzzing faintly. Heart pounding, I spun around. Nothing. Just the cold night air pressing against my skin. I hurried home, locked the door, and texted Ruby and Jace.
Tell me this is you messing with me.
Huh?
Bro, that's creepy AF. Block 'em. So I did, but blocking didn't stop the second snap. 10:02 p.m., a live video, my bedroom window, from the outside. My hands shook as I crept to the window, peeking through the blinds. Darkness, no movement. But I swore I could feel something, someone out there, staring back. I slammed the curtains shut, locked the window, and buried myself under the covers. By morning, I had almost convinced myself it was just a sick prank, until Ruby got the same message. Then Jace. But when they tried to reply, the account had disappeared. The next day, Fiona Miller went missing. She was last seen leaving cheer practice. Her final snap?
Someone's following me!
But no one took it seriously. The police said she ran away. That night, I checked her snap map. Her Bitmoji flickered near an abandoned house on the edge of town. Then it vanished. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. If this was connected, we had to do something. Jace and I dug through Fiona's messages, searching for clues. Her chat history was empty, wiped clean like ours. But then Jace found something, a common thread. Every victim had used vanish mode to talk to an unknown user before disappearing. No saved messages, no evidence, just gone. We're dealing with someone who knows exactly how to erase their tracks, Jace murmured. This isn't random. I had a plan, a reckless, stupid, probably going to get myself killed plan. I unblocked "See you in 10" and sent a message.
Who are you?
The reply came instantly, a snap. I opened it, my breath catching. It was my house, a live video. My location pinged in the corner of the screen. I had just given them my exact address. Jace grabbed my wrist. Kylie, we need to go, now. We jumped into his car and sped towards the last place Fiona's Bitmoji had been seen. The abandoned house loomed before us, its windows like hollow eyes. We stepped inside, our footsteps echoing against the rotten floorboards. The stench of mildew and something metallic filled the air. In the corner of the room, a table was lined with burner phones, their screens glowing faintly. I felt sick. Each phone was logged into a different hacked Snapchat account. Live maps, chat histories, photos. The stalker had been watching us through our own devices. Jace grabbed my hand. We have to get out of here. A notification pinged from my phone. I glanced down, my blood turning to ice. A new snap from "See you in 10." Turn around. Jace and I spun, but it was too late. The door slammed shut. The air shifted. A presence. Someone in the shadows. A figure moved forward. A hoodie, dark jeans, a phone raised. Watching us. Recording us.
Who the hell are you?
My voice cracked. No response. The figure stepped closer. I fumbled with my phone, fingers shaking. If we didn't make it out, someone had to know what happened. I switched on live location and started a locked story, one that would auto-upload if I didn't check in. Jace lunged, shoving the figure back. Run! I sprinted down the hall, the floor creaking, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The stalker's footsteps pounded behind us. A door at the end of the hall, locked. A hand closed around my wrist, yanking me back. I screamed. Jace tackled them, knocking the phone from their grip. The screen shattered, casting jagged light across their face. Recognition hit me like a sledgehammer. Not some faceless predator. Tyler Briggs, high school dropout, tech genius. The guy who always lurked online, watching but never speaking. His lip curled into a smile. You all trusted vanish mode so much, didn't you? My stomach churned.
You were stalking us for fun?
His gaze was cold. It was an experiment. How easily can people disappear when they think they're safe? The distant wail of sirens cut through the air. My locked story had gone live. Tyler's expression faltered. He bolted for the back door, but Jace tripped him. He hit the floor with a grunt, just as flashing red and blue lights filled the windows. The cops burst in, guns raised. Hands! Show me your hands! It was over. Fiona was found, barely breathing but alive. The town reeled. Parents freaked. Snapchat cracked down on security. But me? I deleted the app, for good. Because some ghosts don't haunt old houses. They haunt your screen, and they're always watching. Hi, my name is Kumar, and I was raised in a small Indian village where the summer air was infused with the fragrance of fresh mangoes, and the land shimmered gold in the afternoon sunlight. Childhood was simple and beautiful. Cool winds blew on our faces. Friends and I ran through fields where the greenery spread endlessly, climbed trees, and swam in the clearest ponds reflecting the blue sky like mirror. Life was easy, worry-free, and full of laughter. Then, out of nowhere, village children started to go missing. It began as a whisper among the elders, then acquired the entire village. Initially, these missing cases were brushed off as unfortunate incidents, but soon the locals started to get scared. A boy from the next community went missing on his way home from school. One girl went to bring back a jug of water and never returned. Their parents searched, calling out, and the echoes could be heard across the village, but the police dismissed it as trivialities. They called them missing cases, but the police never truly searched. Things started to go down really soon. Parents forbade their children from staying outside for too long. Those of us still playing out now moved by twos and threes, trying to protect one another from the unknown power that snatched away our friends. A village that was once our playground started to feel different and darker. It was as if something sinister lurked in the corners that the sun couldn't touch. One evening, when I was 7, my best friend Hari and I lost track of time. We had been playing near the old banyan tree, laughing and chasing fireflies, not caring that the sun had dipped into the horizon. As I looked up, I noticed the sky orange, red with the hue of the dying sunlight. Warmer tones of the evening became cooler night blues. The fields were filled with the chirping of crickets, while eerie howls of coyotes danced in the air around us at a distance. "We should take the shortcut through the woods," Hari suggested. It wasn't the safest route, but it was the fastest way home. The thought of our mother scolding us for being late made us quick to agree. We started walking. Along with the sounds of our voices, we could hear the crunch of leaves under our feet. 5 minutes into the walk, we began hearing a distant crying. It was like the cry of a child. At first far, but then it became louder. Thinking a poor kid must be in trouble, Hari ran toward that sound. I had no other option than to follow him, but a red alarm had already activated in my mind. Who in the woods would be crying? A lost child? A ghost? Every ghost story we ever heard ran through my head. We got close to a big bush, and peeking through the leaves, we saw it in the damp earth. It was an old, shabby doll, button-eyed, glittering in the moon's dim light. The instant I stopped to touch it, the cry peeped again, clearer this time. The cry wasn't even of a child. It was coming from the doll. Hari smirked, thinking something must have made the doll move to let out that cry. But I wondered, what or who? We turned to leave when we heard footsteps behind us. There was a man, a tall, lanky man standing under the glimmering moonlight. His partial face was curtained under the shadows of the tree branches above him. His eyes were wide, and he had this stretchy, unnatural, dragged grin. He whispered, "Do you like toys? I have many more. Come with me and I'll show you." My blood ran cold. Hari and I had heard the stories, the missing children, the stranger who lured them away. We shook our heads and turned to leave, but he moved fast. Before we could take another step, he appeared in front of us, blocking our way, his long fingers reaching into his pocket, pulling out chocolates. "Come now, don't be afraid. Take these. I have plenty more." His voice was smooth and coaxing, but there was something off about it, something that made me scared enough to never stay outside after dark. "No!" Hari suddenly yelled, grabbing my hand. "Let's go, Kumar!" We started to run, our feet pounding against the forest floor. My heart hammered against my ribs. I expected to hear some footsteps and feel his hands grabbing at our clothes, but as I glanced back, I saw something worse. He wasn't chasing us. He was standing still, and he was munching on something. At first, I thought it was the chocolates that he offered us, but then I noticed it. From a black plastic bag, he pulled something out, something dark, wet, and dripping with a thick red liquid. He stuffed it into his mouth, chewing slowly, savoring it. The way the thick residue ran down his chin, I got doubts about whether this guy's a real human being or not. It wasn't food. At least I won't call it food. I didn't scream. I couldn't. Hari dragged me forward, forcing me to move until we reached the edge of the woods, where the sight of the village lights finally made us feel safe. We ran home and told our parents. They listened, their faces pale with horror. But when they asked around the village, no one knew who the man was. A year later, my father got a job in the city and we moved away. Life changed. One evening, I got home from school and found my parents glued to the TV. The tone of the news anchor was one of grave seriousness, depicting a case that had shaken the entire country. A man had been caught, a man who had been kidnapping and murdering children along with a friend who was equally sick like him. 19 confirmed victims, some as young as 5. He had even confessed to eating their flesh. The screen flashed an image of him. It was the man from the woods, the one who had grinned at us, the one who had offered us chocolates. My legs grew weak. My mother turned to look at me, her eyes wide with horror. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, haunted even now by thoughts that just couldn't let go. I had stared into the eyes of a monster and lived to tell the tale. I should have been one of them, but I wasn't, and to this day, I don't know why. Around 2006, cases of missing children began skyrocketing in a village of Noida, India, which was later termed as the Nithari killings. A series of gruesome child murders and assaults came to light through this case. Cops investigated the cases and found out that the crimes were committed by Maninder Singh Pandher, a businessman, and his domestic help, Surinder Kohli, at Pandhander's bungalow in Nithari village. Police discovered human remains in drains near the house, leading to shocking revelations of abuse, murder, and cannibalism. Kohli admitted to luring, killing, and dismembering multiple victims, mostly children. Both were sentenced to death, but Pandher was later acquitted in some cases. The case exposed severe police negligence and the vulnerability of marginalized communities. I never truly wanted to believe that demons exist. Ghosts, perhaps. Spirits of the dead. In this world, sure. But demons? They belong in horror movies and Sunday sermons, not in a 3-bedroom house on Carolina Street in Gary, Indiana, of which I am a proud tenant. But they came anyway. It started with the flies. Black, buzzing swarms of flies, appearing even when winter stood firm. Kill as many as I did and fumigate the house, they just kept coming back. This was no normal infestation. They were not to have been there, but this was just the start. At night, I heard heavy boots climbing and descending the stairs, pacing the halls just outside my bedroom. The first few times, I thought it was one of my children getting a glass of water or going to the bathroom, but when I checked, they were sound asleep, their chests moving up and down in utter, merciful ignorance. The footsteps continued, and they wouldn't stop, not even when I had locked every door and window and suspended myself from prayer. Then my children changed. First, it was little things. My daughter talked to invisible friends in whispered tones, her eyes darting to the darkest corners of the room as if something lurked there. The youngest woke up in the morning with deep fingernail scratches on his arms and legs, his sheets twisted as if he had been fighting something in his sleep. But my eldest? He scared me the most. One night, he sat up in bed, foaming, still straight and motionless, and with a blank stare, I called his name. He turned his head slowly, very slowly, as if he were straining to do so, until he was locked into his stare upon me. His smile was not that smile. It was the smile of something else. "Mama," he whispered. "He wants to play." The room became unbearably still, crushed under the invisible weight of something pushing against my skin. I could not move. My son, my baby, gave a guttural laugh that made bile rise in my throat. The spirit left suddenly, and my son, after blinking back the tears, looked around confused and began to cry. He couldn't tell me what had just happened. That was when I realized there was something evil in our house. So I went to the priest, Father MacLeod, listened to my story with a stern expression while I told him about everything strange that happened, the whispered voices and the shadows that slithered across the walls that should have been empty. He agreed to come out to the house, to bless it, and to drive whatever it was away. He lived to regret it. His complexion drained the moment he walked into the house. The air chilled, enough for our breath to be visible. He dipped holy water in every room, muttering prayers in hushed tones. Down in the basement, something growled. The walls quivered. Above us, the bulb exploded, snuffing our surroundings in total darkness. "This is not a ghost," he told me afterward. "This is something much worse." The Department of Child Services got involved when my children started missing school. When they arrived for their visit, they witnessed things I could barely explain. My youngest was lifted from the ground, an invisible force hoisting him into the air before he was flung across the room like a rag doll. My middle child walked backward up a wall, an inhuman grace in his movements before he collapsed to the floor unconscious. The caseworker screamed. The nurse ran for help. They took my children away that night. In the quiet darkness of the empty house, I cried all alone that cold, terrible night, with only that thing crouching in the other room. I fought, I prayed, I begged to God to take this curse away from my family. The priest returned, stronger this time, more prepared. He performed an exorcism on me first, 3 times. I don't remember much, just flashes of darkness, the feeling of something clawing inside my skin, trying to tear its way out. I remember screaming, though I don't recall if it was my voice or someone else's. On another night, I saw the thing in the window. I was lying in bed, exhausted, but too petrified to sleep. This heaviness came over me. Further back on the bed, pressure coming onto the bed. It crept up my legs. I gasped. I couldn't move. The room was dark, another darkness looming above me. He had no face, but his eyes, those eyes were disfigured as burnt embers filled with hatred, hunger, and some other sense, disdain. "You'll never be free," a voice growled. With sensation finally flowing again through my body, I leapt off the bed, gasping for air. It felt as though it had all turned to ash in the back of my throat. I ran. I took my keys and fled into the night without looking back until I reached, miles further, the church where Father MacLeod waited. I sobbed. He pressed a crucifix into my hands, firm-fingered. "Then we shall make it." The last exorcism was different, intense, violent. The thing inside me, the thing inside my children, the thing inside the house fought back with a vengeance. Doors slammed, walls shook. My screams were interspersed with moments where I tried to shake off the thing weighing on me. It hissed in my ear, said things to me that I will never forget, but never utter. Then, suddenly, it was gone. The air cleaned. The house felt still. The darkness that had clung to me, to my children, to every square inch of that damned place lifted. We moved out, left it all behind, that house, and I never looked back. Years later, I learned the house got demolished. It was bought by Zach Baggins, filmed in a documentary, and then ultimately destroyed. But I know the thing that had tormented us hasn't vanished. Not really. Sometimes, late at night, when I close my eyes, I still hear the whispers. "You'll never leave me." Latoya Amons, an Indiana woman, claims she and her 3 children were tormented by demonic forces in their Gary, Indiana home in 2011. Dubbed the 200 Demon House case, the alleged hauntings included levitation, shadowy figures, and violent possessions. Eamon sought help from police, doctors, and clergy, leading to an investigation by child services and law enforcement. A Catholic priest, Father Michael Maginot, performed multiple exorcisms on Amans, one sanctioned by the church. Official reports from police and medical staff described eerie, unexplainable events, adding to the case's notoriety. The home was later demolished by paranormal investigator Zach Baggins, who documented the case in his 2018 film Demon House. Amans has since remained largely private, only occasionally speaking about her experiences, maintaining her belief that the house was infested with evil forces. The case remains one of the most controversial modern possession claims in the U.S. It started with a flyer.
Looking for fresh faces. High-paying modeling gigs. No experience needed.
I was 19, drowning in bills and desperation. My mom was sick, the debt collectors relentless, and I saw no way out of our suffocating life. That ad felt like salvation. The interview was held in a 5-star Manhattan hotel. I almost backed out when I saw the marble floors and gold chandeliers, but Jeffrey Epstein greeted me like an old friend, his polished smile warm and inviting. "You've got the look," he said, his eyes scanning me. Innocent. Perfect. His assistant, Ghislaine Maxwell, stood beside him, her smile sharp.
This is your big break.
She said,
How would you feel about a weekend networking trip? Designers, photographers, influencers, all in one place. This will change your life.
I believed them. The private jet was surreal. The seats were white leather, the staff attentive, and other girls my age were laughing and taking selfies. Their laughter seemed too loud, too forced, like they were convincing themselves this wasn't a mistake. When we landed, the island was breathtaking. Turquoise waters, lush greenery, and a sprawling mansion that looked like something out of a billionaire's fantasy. But as the sun set, the paradise began to rot. That night, there was a party. The music was deafening, the lights dazzling, and the alcohol flowed endlessly. The older men prowling through the crowd felt like wolves among lambs. One man's hand brushed my shoulder, his fingers lingering too long.
She's new.
Ghislaine said, pulling me aside. Her tone was clipped.
Stick with me, and I'll make sure you're introduced to the right people.
From the corner of the room, I saw a girl slumped on a couch. Her dress was torn at the strap, her makeup smeared, and her head lolled to the side like she was barely conscious. 2 men carried her away.
She's had too much fun.
Ghislaine said, laughing lightly. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I woke up with no memory of how I got to my room. My body ached in ways I couldn't explain. I looked down and realized I wasn't wearing my clothes, just an oversized shirt I didn't recognize. The mirror revealed bruises on my thighs and scratches down my arms. My lipstick was smeared across my face, my hair tangled like I'd been in a fight. Breakfast was worse. One girl sat slumped over her plate, barely able to hold her head up. Another had bruises on her neck, her eyes swollen from crying.
They're just tired. This is normal. Don't overthink it.
Normal? The days turned into a blur of horror. Every night was the same. Drugs, alcohol, and men who saw us nothing more than toys. They forced drinks into our hands and pills into our mouths.
It's just to help you relax.
Ghislaine would say, her tone sharp whenever I hesitated. One night, I saw a girl being dragged down the hall, her dress torn, lips bleeding profusely, her legs dragging uselessly. She weakly clawed at the arms of the man pulling her.
Please.
She whispered, barely audible.
Please, no.
Her doors slammed shut, silencing her cries. I stopped eating. My stomach churned constantly, and every shadow felt like it was alive. At night, the muffled screams of other girls filled the hallways. Doors slammed, heavy footsteps thudded on the floors, and I pressed my hands over my ears. praying it wouldn't be me next. Then, Jeffrey came to my room. He sat on the edge of my bed, his voice calm, almost gentle. "You need to stop fighting this," he said, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "Do you know how many girls would kill for this opportunity? Just play along, and I'll take care of you. Cross me, and you'll regret it." His hand lingered on my cheek, and I wanted to vomit. I tried to escape. At dawn, while the guards switched shifts, I slipped out of my room. The jungle was alive with eerie sounds as I ran, branches clawing at my skin. My feet bled from sharp rocks, but I didn't care. The dock was within sight when I heard voices behind me. "She's here!" I dove into the underbrush, holding my breath as flashlights sliced through the darkness. Ghislaine's voice rang out, sharp and furious.
Find her. She doesn't leave this island.
They dragged me back. Ghislaine slapped me hard, splitting my lip.
You're ruining everything.
She hissed, her nails digging into my arm. That night, they drugged me again. I woke up in a haze, my limbs heavy and unresponsive. I could hear muffled sobs from the other girls, but I couldn't move. When the FBI raided the island, I thought it was another trick. But then an agent wrapped me in a blanket and whispered, "You're safe now." Safe. Even now, I wake up drenched in sweat, the screams of the girls still echoing in my head. Jeffrey is dead, but his shadow lingers, a reminder of how easily predators hide behind wealth and power. If you're reading this, remember, monsters like him don't lurk in the shadows. They smile, wear suits, and promise you the world. Jeffrey Epstein, a wealthy financier, used his influence and wealth to exploit young women, often targeting aspiring models. He, along with associates like Ghislaine Maxwell, lured victims with a false promise of modeling opportunities, mentorship, or connections to elite circles. Under the guise of professionalism, he manipulated and trafficked these women, subjugating them to abuse at his properties, including in New York, Florida, and his private island. Many victims were young and vulnerable, coerced through intimidation or deceit. Epstein's 2019 arrest shed light on his predatory network, but his controversial death and custody left many questions about his enablers unanswered. I remember the night my mother first told me about Stepan. It was late. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows of our tiny shack in Yablushne. The famine had turned our village into a ghost town. People disappeared, one by one, and nobody asked questions. Hunger made us desperate. Hunger made us mad. Mother sat beside me, her fingers bony, her breath foul from the stale soup we barely had enough to share. Her sunken eyes stared deep into mine, and then she whispered something I would never forget.
They ate him, Andre.
I swallowed, my throat dry. Who? She squeezed my arm so tight it hurt.
Stefan.
My brother, the one I never met.
The neighbors took him.
She continued, her voice hollow.
Boiled him. Ate him. There was nothing left. Not even bones.
I wanted to scream, to deny it, but I knew better. I had seen things children shouldn't see. People are gone one day, and their houses are empty the next. The smell of burning flesh in the air was different from the scent of wood and straw. Mother pulled me closer, her nails digging into my skin.
This is why you must never wander, Andre. Or they will eat you too.
I nodded, shivering, my stomach twisting in fear. But deep down, something else stirred. A question, one I dared not ask. How did she know? The nights that followed were restless. I could hear my mother moving about the house, always near the pot, always muttering. The shadows she cast against the walls were grotesque, hunched, inhuman. The hunger had changed her, or maybe this was who she had always been. One night, I awoke to a strange sound, wet, rhythmic, a quiet chewing, followed by heavy breathing. I crept out of bed, my small feet cold against the wooden floor, and peeked into the main room. She was crouched over a slab of meat, tearing into it with her teeth. Strands of flesh hung from her lips as she chewed, her fingers coated in slick red. The candle flickered, casting light over something that made my stomach lurch. A severed hand, fingers curled as if frozen mid-reach. The fingernails were dirty, the skin pale and puckered from boiling. My mother's teeth cracked through the bone with a sickening snap. I stepped back too quickly. The floor creaked. Her head snapped up, blood trickling down her chin. For a moment, neither of us moved. Her eyes were wild, her pupils dilated. Then, slowly, she smiled.
You're awake, Andre.
She whispered.
Come sit with me.
I shook my head, pressing my back against the wall. She picked up a strip of flesh, the muscle fibers tearing apart like overcooked meat.
You must eat, or you'll be weak. And the weak,
she trailed off, licking the blood from her fingers.
They don't last.
I turned and ran, but the house was small. She caught my wrist, her grip iron tight. Her breath was hot against my face, stinking of iron and decay.
You'll understand. One day.
I stopped speaking to her after that. I refused to eat, my stomach twisted in hunger, but I would rather starve than take what she offered. Then, one evening, she brought a bowl to me, smiling in a way that made my skin crawl.
Eat. It's just meat.
I didn't touch it. She left the bowl by my bed. The scent filled the room, growing heavier and thicker. My stomach churned, the hunger unbearable. On the third night, dizzy with starvation, I gave in. The first bite was greasy and rich. The moment it touched my tongue, I gagged, vomiting violently onto the floor. My mother stood in the doorway watching.
Every night until you learn,
she whispered. And so it continued. Night after night, the meat, nausea, the dry heaving. My body wasted away, yet she never relented. Until one day, I swallowed it. Just once, just to make it stop. But it wasn't the same. My tongue accepted it. I knew it was so wrong, but my body was weak to understand, and I kept eating again and again and again. And she smiled. The following morning, I ran. I didn't stop, not for miles. Not until the house, the shack, and the horrors faded into the distance. I thought I had escaped. I thought I was free. Years passed. I grew older and stronger. I left Yabluche behind, fleeing to the city of Rostov, where the streets were crowded and the air smelled of coal and industry. I found work as a laborer, hauling bricks and mortar until my hands blistered and my back ached. The physical pain was a welcome distraction from the memories that haunted me. I told myself I was starting anew, that the past could no longer touch me. I met a woman named Olena. She was kind, with soft hands and a gentle laugh. We married, and in time, we had children, 2 boys and a girl. I became a teacher, shaping young minds, molding them into something better than I had been. I told myself I was normal, I was whole, but the hunger never truly left me. It lingered in the back of my mind, a quiet, insidious presence. I ignored it, burying it under the weight of routine and responsibility. I told myself it was gone, that I had conquered it. Then came that night in Rostov. The hunger crawled its way back. It whispered to me, wrapping its fingers around my throat, digging into my skull, pressing until I couldn't breathe. She was young, barely a woman, alone, vulnerable. She reminded me of a rabbit caught in a trap. I don't remember grabbing her. I don't remember the first cut, but I remember the warmth of her blood, the way it pooled in my hands, the way her body trembled, then went limp. And then, the hunger spoke. The memory of my mother flashed before me, her teeth sinking into flesh, her eyes rolling back in pleasure. I stared down at the body. The urge crawled under my skin, into my bones, whispering, calling. Now I've become death. I'm no more human. Andrei Chikatilo, the Soviet serial killer known as the Butcher of Rostov, murdered at least 52 people between 1978 and 1990. His violent tendencies were linked to a traumatic childhood in famine-stricken Ukraine. His mother, Anna, allegedly told him that his older brother had been kidnapped and eaten by starving villagers during the Holodomor, a claim that deeply haunted him. Chikatilo later developed sadistic and cannibalistic urges, mutilating his victims and sometimes consuming body parts. Arrested in 1990, he was convicted in 1992 and executed in 1994. His case revealed deep flaws in Soviet-era criminal investigations and forensic science. His own mother's terrifying stories of cannibalism may have created the monster he became. I had always believed that the world I was living in was the only world. My name is Christina Babin, and for the first 19 years of my life, I was living in a nightmare masquerading as religion. The Children of God, that's what they called themselves. A godly, loving community, they said. But behind the gates, behind the smiling faces and gentle words, something much darker, much more sinister. The compound was a prison shrouded in scripture, windowless rooms along the corridors, walls whispering prayers that were not intended to save but to control. A nauseatingly sweet incense forever perfumed the air, covering up the smell of sweat, rot, and terror. The elders glided like specters through the shadows, their whispers hissing through the corridors, their footsteps too quiet, too deliberate. We were never alone. Even in our sleep, we knew their eyes upon us, always upon us. Children marched in submissive silence, their eyes empty, their hearts already gone. The rewards for obedience were swift and ruthless. Warm baths that continued until you were silent. Nights locked in the black cellar where something stirred in the blackness, whispering things that crawled along your skin. The elders spoke of love, but love equaled obedience. Love equaled sacrifice, and occasionally, love equaled pain. There were scratches on the walls, subtle and desperate. Hopes scratched into the walls with fingernails, too superficial to be detected by anyone important. The mattresses and the bunks smelled of sweat and something else, something sour and foul. I discovered not to question the children who vanished during the night, the ones who went to serve and didn't return. The regulations were straightforward. Obey, serve, let go completely. The men's glances lingered too long over us, their hands touching against us under the guise of friendship. They assured us we had been chosen, and that God had expressed his love through them. Their touch crawled beneath my skin. Some of us struggled back. Once. The cries of those who dared resist rang for days through the corridors, never to be heard again. The sermons of the elders turned into manipulation lullabies, hammering them into our brains with the message that pain and pleasure were synonymous. The women, the mothers, turned their faces away. They had stopped struggling a long time ago. I learned to be quiet, to smile, to gulp down my fear, my pain, my revulsion. But the worst of it? The loneliness. Because they ensured we had nowhere to go, no world outside, no books or other than approved ones, no television, no radio, no news. The world outside was the enemy, they informed us, and we were the chosen ones. Then I turned 19. Something within me shattered. Perhaps it was looking at the younger girls, the ones who still retained baby fat in their cheeks, being readied for their sacred purposes. Perhaps it was realizing I had been ready to do the same as a child myself, that the cycle would continue indefinitely. Perhaps it was the simple revulsion of realizing that I would never be released. I began watching, listening, collecting morsels of knowledge. The old ones talked softly of a woman who had tried to flee all those years ago, how they punished her when they brought her back in, beat her, starved her, returned her to the fold. They claimed she died because she lost faith. I knew otherwise. I had looked upon the place they held for the non-believers, the blood on the mattresses, the iron restraints welded into the wall. The whispers increased at night. The elders whispered of purification rites, of girls being brought into dark rooms and returned changed, their eyes vacant, their voices gentler, broken. The smell of smoldering herbs covered up something worse, something like metal, blood left in the sun too long. I waited, planned, counted the seconds in my head as I moved through my daily tasks. Scrubbing floors, cooking meals, tending to the elders. I studied the guards, the way they changed shifts, and the weak spots in the fences. And then, one night, when the air was thick with the summer heat and the sound of crickets filled the silence, I ran. My heart pounded against my ribs as I slipped by the sleeping area. The fence stretched before me, a rusty metal behemoth in the moonlight. My hands bled as I crawled over it, gasping for breath. I could hear them stirring behind me, could hear the screams as they caught on that I was gone. I landed hard on the ground, my ankle twisting in agony beneath me, but I didn't slow. I couldn't. Branches lashed my face as I ran through the forest, my lungs searing. I could hear them crashing behind me, the dogs barking, the voices shouting my name. I knew what would happen if they caught me. I knew I wouldn't live through it. I ran until my legs failed, falling onto the side of a deserted road. My world swirled, the world spinning. I knew they would catch me, that it was finished. And then, headlights. A car, a man getting out. My father, my actual father, the one they said left me, the one I believed was dead. He wasn't. He had been searching for me for years. I don't recall much after that. Only his arms holding me, only the sense of security, of warmth, of something I never knew before, liberty. The cult sought to locate me, sought to pull me back, but they were not able to, no longer. The nightmares did not disappear. The voices continue to whisper when the nights are too still. The smell of that rancid incense continues to taint my dreams. The shadows in the corners of my room move occasionally, just as they used to in that place. The difference is, though, I got out. And now I assist others in doing so, because no one deserves to be in a world where love is a prison and faith is a weapon. I made it through, and so can they. Children of God, now known as the Family International, was a religious cult known for abuse, brainwashing, and various exploitation. Christina Babin was born into the cult and endured years of abuse, isolation, and forced labor. At 19, she realized the lies and manipulation she had been subjected to. She bravely escaped, found her biological father outside the cult, and began the difficult process of deprogramming herself from the cult's teachings. Christina later became an advocate for cult survivors, helping others escape and heal from their trauma. I remember the day Mia first told me about the Red Room curse. We were at our usual lunch table at school, her fingers jittering on the plastic tray as she leaned in closer, almost conspiratorial.
Last night I was surfing the web. You know, random rabbit holes. And I found it.
Her voice was low, almost frightened.
The Red Room.
I raised an eyebrow, unimpressed.
Mia, come on. It's just creepy pop-up prank. No, Riley.
Her voice wavered.
It's not just a prank. After I closed it, I started getting messages and calls. Unknown numbers. They all said the same thing. What did they say?
Mia looked around, with her nerves causing her eyes to dart about. She shook her head and pushed away her tray.
I can't talk about it.
She stood up so suddenly that her chair nearly tipped over, and as she walked away, I noticed how her hands trembled and how she hugged her arms around herself, as if she were trying to hold herself together. I dismissed it at first as just more of her games, but then Mia exploded. Mia looked haggard the next day, her normally tidy hair messy, eyes sunken and bloodshot. In class, she hardly spoke, and when I tried to approach her with a question, she just seemed to look at me through a haze, past me as if peering right through me into something I couldn't see. Then came the first incident. It was while I was going back to my locker to grab my math book, then I spotted Mia in the dark hallway near the supply closet, marker in hand, furiously scrawling something on the wall. I took a step closer, heart pounding. On the wall, she wrote, "I'm cursed," over and over again in thick, jagged letters with nearly half the wall covered.
Mia?
My voice trembling. She turned around so fast I stumbled back. Her pupils were dilated, face pale and clammy with sweat. Then, without a word, she dropped the marker and walked away, as if I was frozen there. The second incident was worse. I was stuck in detention and, when finally leaving, heard faint whispers from the girls' restroom. The school was mostly empty, and for some reason, that sound twisted my stomach. I pushed the restroom door open and found Mia standing before the mirror. She wasn't alone. She was talking to her reflection. Her voice was low and guttural, almost inhuman.
You can't have me. I won't let you. I won't.
Suddenly, she stopped, giggled, and then turned to look at me.
It's watching, Riley.
She whispered.
It's changing me.
I ran out of there so quickly that my legs wobbled. By the next day, Mia had hardly spoken, and I was worried sick, looking for her on the recess. Then I saw her walk toward the woods behind the school. With her was Bianca, another girl from our class. There was a terrible feeling in my stomach, and I rushed after them. The more I went into the woods, the stronger the anxiety within me. The air was too still, uncomfortably so. When I caught up with them, my blood ran cold. Bianca was down, struggling, dirt and tears lining her face. Mia was on top of her, pressing a fork, probably stolen from the cafeteria, dangerously close to Bianca's left eye.
Mia!
I shouted. Bianca whined, hardly able to defend herself as Mia jabbed the fork in and out of Bianca's skin, small beads of blood forming. But Mia's face was twisted in something just inhuman. A grin expanded her lips, while the fingers trembled with manic energy.
It told me to do this.
She whispered.
I have to.
I didn't think. I moved. I charged at Mia, pinning her shoulders down in an attempt to drag her off Bianca. She screamed like a wild animal, thrashing wildly as she fought against me. Bianca rolled away, straight away holding her face and sobbing. Mia's nails drove into the soft skin of my arms, but I held her with all my strength. I yanked her back toward me, and down we both went to the ground. The head hit a rock with a sickening sound, and then silence. Mia lay unmoving. Her chest barely rose and fell as she breathed shallowly. Blood from the back of her head flowed freely. All I could think of was Bianca crying for help. All I could do was stare at my best friend and wonder how the hell we got all the way here. The last time I saw Mia was in the asylum. She was shut inside a padded cell. The walls of her room were defaced, smeared by red crayon. I'm cursed. She had written it hundreds of times, on and on, until the words had bled together in a spiraling whirl of insanity. She turned around at the sound of my calling, and such was the shock that I almost screamed. Her face was ruined, raw with scratches. Her skin was angry and oozing pus, her fingers bandaged, restrained so she couldn't maim herself any further. And yet, she smiled.
Riley!
She cooed, syrupy sweet. With a little giggle, she came right next to me. Then she bent close, breath against my ear.
Don't go to the Red Room, Riles.
I ran out of there, her laughter echoing behind me. Even then, I could still hear it. Sometimes, late at night, I received text messages on my phone from an anonymous number. All say the same thing.
Do you like the Red Room?
The Red Room Curse is a notorious Japanese internet urban legend linked to a murder case in the early 2000s. According to the legend, users who stumbled upon a mysterious pop-up asking, "Do you like the Red Room?" become cursed. The pop-up cannot be closed, and those who see it are later found dead, often in rooms smeared with red, either blood or ominous messages. The urban legend turned chillingly real in 2004 when a Japanese 11-year-old girl known as Nevada-tan murdered her classmate in Sasebo, Nagasaki. Reports suggest she had visited disturbing websites, including one allegedly linked to the Red Room Curse, before committing the crime. Though no direct connection was proven, the case fueled fears that the legend had a dark influence on impressionable minds. Today, the Red Room Curse remains a terrifying piece of internet folklore, a reminder of how the digital world can blur the lines between fiction and reality.
It started out as just another typical Saturday night. I was hanging out at home, bored and looking for something to do. I decided to check Snapchat and see if any of my friends were out. I posted a quick selfie with the cat ears filter and geofilter for my neighborhood turned on, hinting that I was down to meet up. After a little while, I noticed I had a notification from someone I didn't know. The name on the account was just a jumble of numbers. I opened it expecting it to be spam or some random bot, but it was an actual photo. It looked like it was taken from across the street, right outside my house. I felt the chill go down my spine. Who was this person and how did they know where I lived? I decided not to respond and just ignore it, hoping they'd go away. I switched over to text my friend Jen and see if she wanted to go grab food. She said she was down, so I left the house and started driving over to the diner we liked. When I parked, I shot a quick snap of the glowing neon sign to share where I was. As Jen and I were eating, I got another notification from the random numbers account. My heart sank when I opened it. It was a photo of the exact parking spot I was in, taken from another car nearby. How was this person following me? I tried to hide my fear from Jen as I laughed off as some kind of prank. After dinner, Jen and I walked around the neighborhood to get ice cream from the shop down the block. I took a snap of my chocolate cone, again forgetting to turn off my location. Not even 5 minutes later, I got a notification. My blood turned cold. It was a photo of the exact flavor ice cream cone I had, clearly taken secretly from inside the shop. Jen noticed me starting to freak out and asked what was wrong. I showed her the messages and she agreed it was really creepy. We decided to go back to her place instead of walking around outside anymore. I was really shaken up and just wanted to get somewhere safe. Once we got to Jen's, we locked all the doors and closed the curtains. We tried to just watch movies and relax, but I kept obsessively checking the windows. I knew it was ridiculous, but I had this paranoid sense that I was being watched from outside. A few hours later, I got yet another message from the stalker account. Hands trembling, I opened it. It was a photo of Jen's house, taken from the street behind her backyard. Whoever this was had somehow followed me here. Jen saw the image and completely freaked out. She said I should call the police. My hands were shaking so bad that I could barely dial 911. I told the operator what was happening, and they said they'd send a patrol car to check things out. Jen and I huddled together on the couch, terrified the psycho knew exactly where we were. We kept all lights off, hoping they'd think we left. Soon, I got a notification that made my heart stop. It was a photo of Jen's living room window from the outside, showing the faint outline of us sitting on the couch. The stalker was right outside watching us. A chilling message followed saying they saw me and they were coming for me now. Jen and I leaped up in panic. Suddenly, we heard the patio door handle rattle as someone tried to force their way inside. We screamed and ran to hide in the bathroom, shoving a chair under the doorknob. I heard heavy footsteps come inside the house. The stalker was inside. We could hear them walking around, opening doors, searching for us. We huddled in the tub, sobbing and shaking. Then we heard the sirens approaching. The police. Never had I felt such relief as officers shouted into the house, arresting my stalker. After that terrifying night, I never used Snapchat's location again. I learned the hard way that you never really know who might be watching. Sometimes stalkers don't stay hidden behind their screens. They find ways to follow you into the real world too. I'll never feel totally safe sharing my location online after what happened. You really can't trust anyone, even a stranger who just seems like another faceless account. Behind that blank profile, there could be someone watching your every move, just waiting for the chance to find you alone in the dark. That night was the most scary I've ever felt in my life.
About an hour into the drive, light rain began to fall before thick clouds rolled in, announcing the full fury of the storm. Sheets of rain slammed against my windshield, making visibility difficult, while the distant rumbles of thunder steadily grew closer. With both hands on the wheel, I flicked my eyes from the road ahead to the twisted trees at either side of the highway. The eerie stillness of the forest was electrifying as the brilliant lighting cut through it in quick flashes, both beautiful and eerie. By the time I pulled into the park's designated camping lot, the heart of the storm had passed, leaving behind a steady drizzle tapping against the roof of my camper van. I parked in an empty space near the edge of the lot, where the trees provided a barrier against the rain. The rich scent of damp earth and pine permeated the air as I gave a sigh of relief. I had been dreaming of this trip for weeks, a weekend alone in nature, far away from the stress of work, phone calls, and the noise of the city. On this rainy night, all I wanted was to curl up inside my van with a hot cup of coffee and listen to the rain. I had only just begun to settle in when I saw through my rearview mirror an unmistakable patch of light cutting through the misty evening air. A vehicle pulled up right beside my van, too close for comfort. My stomach constricted. There were so many empty spaces in the parking lot. What compelled him to park right beside me? The old battered car came treading to an abrupt halt, blocking my only way out. The engine groaned before it finally stopped. I tightened my grip around my coffee mug as I peeked through the rain-streaked window. A man stepped out. His clothes were wrinkled and damp, his hair a tangled mess. He was taller than I expected, his frame lanky, but with a wiry strength beneath. His face was partially obscured by the shadows, but when he turned towards me, my breath caught in my throat. His eyes were wrong, too wide, unblinking. He walked around his car, his gaze fixing on my camper. Then, to my growing horror, he leaned toward my window, cupping his hands against the glass. I shuffled backward, pretending not to notice, hoping he'd get the message. "Hey there," he called, his voice muffled but still sharp through the rain. "Nice setup you got here." I forced a polite smile, hoping my disinterest would discourage him.
Thanks.
"You camping alone?" I hesitated. My gut screamed at me not to answer.
Just waiting for my friends.
I lied.
They'll be here soon.
Like it was impossible, his grin widened, but didn't reach his eyes. "Really? I haven't seen anyone else drive up this way." Pretending to check something on my phone to let him know he should leave, I turned away. only to hear this close, wet, squishing sound of shoes against the muddy ground as he moved beside me on my van. "You should come out," he said. "I've got good food in my car. Could use some company." I shook my head, my voice firm.
No thanks. I'm good.
"You sure?" His fingers lightly tapped on the glass. "It's just a meal." I met his gaze then, my stomach twisting. The expression on his face had changed. The grin that had been there now was replaced by something darker, more insistent.
I said no.
I repeated, sharper this time.
Please leave.
He did not move for a long moment. Then he let out this great huffy sound through his nose, fogging my window. "All right," he grumbled, but he stepped away and then, very spitefully, spat on my windshield. Thick, disgusting gob that hit the glass. I recoiled, nausea rising in my throat. Then he disappeared into the trees, never saying another word. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I locked all my doors, double-checked each, then told myself to take a breath. Perhaps he was just some creepy guy looking to have a chat. Maybe he was harmless. I kept the knife nearby, ears tuned to the slightest sound from outside. Hours had passed. The rain had stopped to a drizzle, and I was beginning to entertain a notion of its having really gone off. Then, loud thumping against the driver's side window. I shrieked, my body jerking around towards the sound. My breath caught in my throat. It was him. His face slammed against the glass, eyes bulging behind a disfigured grin. Wide-eyed pupils danced about the interior of my van, while his wet hair matted against his forehead and streamed reflections down the spattered window in short inhales of fog. Then I spotted it, the rock in his hand. Panic flooded me. He was preparing to break the window. He was going to get in. 2 seconds stretched into infinity as I fumbled in a desperate search for my phone or some weapon, while the beating of my heart drowned out the rain in a pounding roar. A sudden flash of lights broke up the stillness in the air and swept over the parking lot. A big RV parked nearby, giving a dispelling hum that cut through the tension. A mother, father, and 2 children climbed out, laughing and stretching their arms. The presence of more people alarmed everything. The man stood motionless. He dropped the rock and turned back to look at me, a confused expression on his face. Slowly, he leaned in and pressed one cheek against the window. His skin smudged the condensation. He moved his lips, forming the words I could not hear. Then, he was gone as suddenly as he had appeared, stepping back. He dropped the rock, and it plopped in the mud with an audible splat sound. He turned towards the car, not breaking the eye contact. A casual, steady retreat. I watched him enter the vehicle, hardly breathing. The old sedan cackled to life, spinning its tires on the wet gravel, and he disappeared into the darkness just beyond the trees. I remained rooted for what seemed like a long time. As this family next to me set up their camp, their boisterous laughter dinned in the still, damp night air. I didn't move. I touched the cold cup of coffee, my hand shaking with the realization that it was no longer hot. I really came here for peace, met some other thing instead. Something that I cannot forget. The story you just saw is based on this creepy footage shared by a travel enthusiast named Lisa. She was on a solo camping trip, sitting inside her van during bad weather and cooling her food when a sketchy guy approached her. The man kept peeking inside her van and trying to get Lisa out, saying he just wanted to talk. But soon, things took a bizarre turn. Watch the video and decide for yourself.
So that I can't move out, and so that I can't go forward. Please leave. Please leave, you sketchy person. Please leave.
I remember the first day when I stepped into St. Luke's Hospital. The pure white walls and the scent of antiseptics hung in the air with the low murmur of life and death. It was my first day as an entrance in this new city. I was keen yet anxious, entirely unaware that I was on the verge of something nightmarish. Charles was the first to greet me. He had been there for years and was supposed to train me. In the beginning, he was charming, even in a quiet, confident manner. He knew all protocols, every patient's name, and seemed deeply committed to his work. "You'll get used to working the night shift." His voice was smooth with a note of odd chill. However, the hardest of all is watching them go. Some of those elderly souls won't last much longer. I nodded, then completely unaware of how ominous were his words. As days passed by, I began to be apprehensive about him, and at times even somewhat impressed by Charles. His obsessive care for work, his passion, he showed up when I least expected him to, with a lingering gaze much longer than comfort would allow. It wasn't just his presence that made the foxes confusing. There was an increase in patient deaths. I initially dismissed this as coincidence. The hospital was essentially packed with old patients, many already sickly. Then I noticed something disturbing. Almost every patient who died suddenly had been visited by Charles minutes before their demise. There was no correlation. Some of their conditions were stable, some were even getting well, but all had one thing in common: Charles. One evening, I found him watching me as I read a patient's file. He smirked knowingly. "What's on your mind, Amy?" he asked, his voice low. I made myself smile.
Just getting the hang of things.
"Nice," he said, stepping closer. "It's better to forget the details. Easier that way." That night, I had decided to have a closer watch on him. A few nights later, I had gone to take a break in the back alley when I sensed something blood-curdling. Charles was crouched down beside a dumpster, facing away from me. He was methodically doing something, and when I took a step forward for a better look, I gasped. He was ripping into a dead pigeon with a surgical blade, fingers stained crimson. His head shot up, his dark eyes piercing through mine. "What's wrong, Amy?" he asked, getting up slowly, knife still in his hand. I shook my head and slowly backed away.
Oh, I went out to get some air.
His lips curled into that strange smirk. "Air does good for you." I hurried back inside, my heart pounding. Whatever was wrong with Charles, it wasn't just in my head. Days passed and the deaths continued. I started keeping notes, watching his every move. I noticed how he always seemed to be around when a patient took their last breaths. He would enter their room, sometimes alone, sometimes under the pretense of checking vitals. Moments later, the machines would beep their ominous tone, signaling the end. Days later, I followed him quietly from one ward to another. He didn't seem to notice me at first, but then came to an abrupt stop, as though sensing my presence. Turning his head slightly, he whispered, "You really shouldn't be out here by yourself, Amy." I froze. His voice was soft, but held something sinister underlying its gentle tone. I forced a laugh.
I'm just checking on the residents.
He chuckled under his breath, continuing down the halls as if nothing had happened. Trembling, I held my pen and wrote another entry in my little black book. A few nights later, I saw him creeping into the supply unit. I felt my heart race as I quietly followed a decent distance away. I peered through a small glass window to see him filling his shirt pockets full of syringes. I knew my time was running short. That same night, I saw Charles walk into the room of an elderly patient who had only recently been admitted. There was a knot in my stomach with fear. I wanted to go in after him, to scream at him not to touch that patient, but was instead rooted to the floor in fear. I figured it would be best to get evidence first. The next morning, that patient was dead. No signs or symptoms had been expressed, no complications. He was just gone. I called the police. I explained everything. The pattern, the theft of the syringes, the suspicious actions of Charles. And they took me seriously and we made a plan. I would stay on watch and call them when Charles made his next move. That night, I saw him again. He slipped another syringe into his pocket and headed towards the room of a man who had only been admitted the day before. I hastily messaged the officers waiting outside. With everything crammed with courage, I trailed behind him. I slowly stood just outside the door, looking through the small crack. What I saw made my stomach drop. Charles loomed over the patient as he whispered something I couldn't hear, standing there with a syringe as he prepared to inject.
Stop!
I continued, in a voice that rang through the room. He turned, his eyes dark, almost soulless. The syringe fit itself more snugly into his fingers. Amy, he purred. You mustn't be here. Before he could make his move, the police rushed in with a bang. Drop the syringe! One shouted. Charles clenched his jaw, his eyes darting to each officer and back to me. For a moment, I thought he might charge, but he hissed and dropped the syringe to a clatter on the floor. They were all over him, forcing him down. As they dragged him away, he turned his head toward me and smiled, a slow, knowing smile. I'll see you around, Amy. I shuddered, wrapping my arms around myself now that reality began to hit. Charles was a monster, and I had witnessed him firsthand, but he had been caught. It was over, or so I had hoped. Even with Charles in custody, a certain tension still hung heavily over me. It was his twinkling words that visited me at night from shadowy corners, and there were nights I woke in a cold sweat, thinking I saw him lurking in a shadow somewhere inside my room. I told myself it was just paranoia, that he was locked away. But fear is a cunning thing. It digs itself in below the skin and refuses to let slip. And while I indeed wanted to believe that Charles was gone forever, there was a part of me lurking, waiting for the moment when his prophecy would come true. That one day, somehow, virtual or otherwise, I would come to see him again. Charles Cullen, a former nurse, is one of the most notorious serial killers in U.S. history. Cullen murdered at least 40 patients, though he confessed to killing up to 400. He worked in multiple hospitals across New Jersey and Pennsylvania, where he had access to vulnerable patients. Cullen used his position to inject lethal doses of drugs like digoxin and insulin, making his crimes difficult to detect. His killing spree went unnoticed for years until 2003 at St. Luke's Hospital in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Cullen's friend, Amy Lauren, secretly cooperated with investigators, helping them gather evidence. Cullen was arrested on December 12, 2003, and confessed to his crimes. He was sentenced to 11 consecutive life sentences in prison without the possibility of parole. Over the years, we've seen incidents and cases that logic and science can't explain. It was nothing new to us, stuff Lorraine and I were used to, but nothing could have prepared us for the house on Chase Street. When we first got to the Smurl family's home in West Pittsons, Pennsylvania, the summer sun felt heavy, but the house looked dark, like it swallowed the light. The porch steps groaned like bones breaking. The paint was peeling, and the windows were covered in a greasy film. Even the grass around the house was dead, like the ground itself was poisoned. Lorraine grabbed my arm so tight it hurt. Her face turned white.
Ed,
She whispered.
it's everywhere here.
The smell hit me next. Rotten meat and burnt hair, but weirdly sweet, like old candy. Inside, the walls seemed to move, like they were breathing. Jack and Janet Smurl stood in the hallway, their eyes hollow, hands shaking. Their 4 girls hid behind them, too scared to speak. Upstairs, Jack's parents barely left their room.
It gets worse when it's dark.
Janet said, her voice cracking.
It touches us.
Jack rolled up his sleeve to show bruises shaped like long fingers. It grabbed my ankle and dragged me off the bed, he said.
Left these marks.
Janet lifted her shirt. 4 deep cuts ran down her back, the skin black and wet.
They won't heal. They just leak.
The kids' stories were worse. The youngest, Heather, woke up screaming about a man with no face who pinched their toes. Twins Mary and Laura drew pictures of a shadow that licked the windows, leaving greasy streaks. The oldest, Susan, said her closet door would creak open at night, and she'd hear something scratching the floor, getting closer to her bed. That night, we set up cameras and tape recorders. Lorraine sat on the floor, holding her cross, her eyes closed like she was listening for something. Midnight came. The house got too quiet. Then, a growl. Not a dog, not a person, something deeper, meaner. The room turned freezing cold. Our breath turned to fog. The growl became a crash, walls shaking, doors slamming. Something heavy ran down the hall towards us. Thud, thud, thud. Each step makes the floorboards crack. Above us, the ceiling creaked like something was crawling up there, claws scratching the plaster. Then, a scream. Jack's mom. We ran upstairs. Her door shook like something was trying to break out. When it flew open, the room stank like rotting meat. The old woman pointed to the corner, shaking. There, in the dark, a shape formed from the shadows, tall, black as oil, with glowing yellow eyes. The air around it twisted, like heat off a fire. Lorraine jumped in front of me as it lunged. Then it broke apart into flies that dropped dead on the floor. The next few days were hell. Jack got thrown into a dresser by nothing, his ribs cracking. Janet's hair got yanked so hard her neck snapped back, and she felt hot breath on her ear growled.
Mine.
The kids' toys moved by themselves. Dolls with melted faces crawled up the stairs, and a rocking horse smashed itself to pieces. One night, the kitchen faucet turned on by itself, spewing black water that smelled like sewage. The thing got stronger. Lorraine saw it crawl on the ceiling like a spider, legs bending wrong. Black mold spread on the walls, making evil markings, upside-down crosses, symbols like goat heads. Mirrors exploded, glass shards making patterns that hurt to look at. The walls leaked black slime that burned skin and made the kids puke. One night, Lorraine told me what she felt during her trance.
It's not just one ghost, Ed. It's hundreds, trapped here, turning into something hungry.
She shook, describing a pit full of screaming people, all stuck together, rotting. We called Father Dylan, an old priest who'd done exorcisms before. He walked in and froze. "This place stinks of hell," he said. We started the exorcism at noon. The priest shouted prayers, but the house fought back. Floorboards shot nails up like spikes. The Bible caught fire. A chandelier fell, almost hitting him. He kept going, splashing holy water that hissed on the walls. Then, silence. For a second, we thought we won. The laughs started low, like a sick joke. The walls bulged, shapes pressing against them, hands, faces, all trying to break through. Father Dylan's nose bled. "It's not leaving!" he yelled. Then, a cut opened on his cheek like a knife slashed him. That night, the thing went wild. Jack woke up, unable to move, something crushing his chest. Janet floated off her bed, her back bending until it snapped before she dropped to the floor. In the girls' room, Heather's teddy bear exploded, spitting out maggots that crawled into their ears. The whole time, a voice boomed, a mix of screams and growls.
Flesh to break, bones to drink.
We ran at sunrise, the Smurls piling into our car with nothing but their clothes, but the darkness followed. In their new apartment, sinks spat black goo. Family photos burst into flames. Heather's reflection in the mirror moved on its own, mouthing words that made her stop talking for weeks. One night, Jack's dad woke up to find his pillow soaked in blood, though he had no wounds. The TV would turn on by itself, showing static with glowing eyes in the center. It took 3 years of prayers, charms, and sleepless nights for the hauntings to fade. The Smurls moved again and changed their phone numbers, but they still jumped at every noise. The house on Chase Street is still there. New owners painted it yellow, but no one lived there long. Neighbors hear things, kids laughing, then screaming, a low growl in the dark saying, "More!" Sometimes at midnight, the streetlights flicker out, and the house seems to grow taller, leaning over the sidewalk like it's watching. Not all hauntings can be cleansed. Not all demons can be cast out. Some just wait in the dark, getting hungrier. In the 1970s and 80s, the Smurl family experienced one of the most violent hauntings ever documented. After moving into their home, they were tormented by a demonic entity. The activity included foul odors and dark shadows creeping along the walls, loud banging and growling sounds at night, family members being levitated and scratched, a dark shadowy figure dragging one family member across the bed. The Smurls sought help from Ed and Lorraine Warren, who confirmed demonic activity. Exorcisms were performed, but the family eventually moved to escape the horror. I never thought ghosts existed, or curses, or any of the spooky tales told at bedtime to keep children out of abandoned houses. But all that changed when I became an employee at the Kansas State History Museum. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary at first. I was just a night security guard, the new guy. The work was easy. Patrol the halls, keep an eye out for anyone who tried to steal any of the artifacts, and don't fall asleep. But there was one exhibit that creeped me out even in the daylight, the Bender family exhibit. It was the old senior guard, Hank, who had told me the tale. He was a gruff old fellow, a lifer in the museum trade, and he had that kind of voice that made each tale sound 1,000 times more terrible than it was. "You ever hear of the Bloody Benders?" he asked one evening, leaning on his flashlight. I nodded my head. "Well, back in the 1870s, a family, father, mother, son, daughter, ran an inn out in the middle of nowhere. Travelers would stop by for a meal, maybe a night's rest, but they never left. The Benders had a trick, a curtain in their cabin that separated the dining area from the back. When they had a guest sit with his back to it, one of the men would strike his skull with a hammer, and the women would cut his throat. They'd then toss the body in a pit in the back. No one had any idea how many they murdered before people began suspecting something." I gulped. "And they got caught?" Hank laughed, shaking his head. "Nope. They disappeared before the law arrived knocking. Some claim they ran. Others claim the townspeople killed them and silenced it. But their cabin, they torched it to the ground, claimed the ground was cursed." I giggled uneasily. "So why does the museum have anything from it?" Hank's face turned black. "Few of the artifacts were recovered. Some tools, some furnishings, and that mirror." He gestured across the room. An old broken mirror on the wall had a darkened, aged surface. "People say they see faces in it, shadows. Sometimes people hear screams at night late." I brushed him off. Museum legends. All places like these have them. He only smirked. "Have a good night, kid." I didn't pay much attention to it until I was by myself. The museum was still, too still. Each step creaked. Each little groan made me shiver. I made my rounds, passing by glass cases of rusty tools and bloodied knives. The mirror was the worst. Each time I walked by, I could have sworn something was just out of sight, waiting. At 2 a.m., the first sound was heard, a muffled scream. I was immobile. My radio spat static to life, hissing before it cut off. The sound returned, low, panicked, as if a person were wedged in between the walls. "Hello?" My voice trembled barely. No reply, just emptiness. And then, footsteps, bare feet on the museum floor. I spun around. Nothing, but the atmosphere clung heavy and thick and crushing. The cold hit like ice, my breath misting in the shadows. The mirror. I spun around. My face was there, but something was off. My breath caught. There was someone standing behind me. A woman. Her face was white. eyes empty, blood trickling from a cut across her throat. She stretched out, fingers quivering, her lips moving as if she was attempting to say something. Then, she attacked. I stumbled backward, heart pounding, but when I spun around, no one was there. Just nothing. I ran. Forget the job. Forget everything. I bolted for the door, but it wouldn't open. The security system had sealed them for the night. I grabbed my radio, but all I got was static. Behind me, the artifacts clattered in their cases. The tools rolled, the knives skidded across the glass. Then, the whispering began. Whispering at first. Then shouting. Dozens of voices, screaming, wailing, begging. The mirror broke. The blow knocked me to the ground, my palms scraping the frigid floor. The air grew rank, the reek of decaying flesh filling my nostrils. A form crept out of the shadows, skull white, jagged, its head hanging to one side unnaturally. Black pits for eyes, its mouth stretching wide enough to cleave its face in two. A hammer held in one bony fist. The walls began to bleed. Black, viscous liquid oozed out of the cracks, forming a puddle at my feet. Something moved in the darkness, a twisted, deformed figure with its limbs twisting in directions that shouldn't. It crawled towards me, speaking in voices that don't belong to this world. A woman's rotting hand burst forth from the floor, grasping at my ankle. Icy fingers closed around my skin, tugging me down. I screamed, thrashing about, but the hold only grew stronger. More hands burst forth from the ground, bony fingers grasping at my skin, pulling me further into the depths. The overhead lighting flashed wildly. The wall shadows crept and distorted, becoming long, skinny figures with empty eyes and twisted, grinning mouths. The laughter began, deep and rasping at first, then swelling into a frenzy of shrieking, demented cackles. My reflection in the broken mirror started to stir. It smiled, advancing, its eyes brimming with black emptiness. It extended a hand, pushing a palm against the glass, and then passing through as if the wall between worlds had disappeared. I struggled, fighting against the cold clutch of the hands. The last thing I remember was seeing my own face looming over me, speaking words I couldn't hear. Then, blackness consumed me. I awoke in the morning. The museum was fine. No shattered mirror and no artifacts spilled across the floor. Just Hank looming over me, shaking his head. "Looks like you had yourself a rough night." I sat up, my body throbbing. "You didn't see anything?" Hank just grinned, but his eyes were different. Something told. "Guess you believe the stories now." I left that day, never went back. But every so often in the middle of the night, I still hear them, the screams, and I know whatever is haunting that place, it's still waiting. The Bloody Benders were a family of serial killers who lured travelers to their Kansas cabin in the 1870s, murdered them, and buried their bodies in the yard. After the Benders vanished to escape justice, locals reported horrifying paranormal activity in the abandoned house. Muffled screams and cries for help, apparitions of the victims wandering the land, furniture moving on its own, and unseen forces pushing visitors, horses refusing to go near the property. The house was eventually burned down due to fear, but the land remains infamous for eerie encounters. It began like any other evening. Me, my cat, and the soft hum of my New York City apartment. I was always a cynic. Ghosts, spirits, hauntings, these were just tales to me. But before David, that's all it was. The first time I ever saw him, it was in a dream. A small boy, head deformed like it had been scooped out on one side. He sat in the green rocking chair beside my bed, just looking at me. "You can ask me 2 questions, he said in a flat, hollow tone. "But never a third, or I will kill you." I don't know what I said, only that I was possessed by a cold feeling of horror when I woke up. The dream lingered for days. Then the cats began to act strangely. Night after night, at midnight exactly, they'd all congregate at the front door, fixated on it if there was something out there. tails puffed up, deep growls burbling in their throats. But when I peeped through the peephole, nothing, just the dark, empty hallway. Then, things got worse. One evening, I was startled awake by a tremendous thud. My heart racing, I grabbed my phone and activated the flashlight. The green rocking chair was moving, not jerking, not shaking, just rocking, back and forth, as if someone had just sat there, staring at me. I was ill. I talked myself into thinking it was my mind playing tricks, sleep paralysis, perhaps. But I knew deep down that this wasn't the case, particularly when I woke up in the morning and checked my phone to find a Twitter notification from one of my followers. Dude, is that someone standing over you in your sleep? My gut fell. I hadn't shared anything, but the idea of something sitting over me while I slept made ice run through my veins. I didn't want to open my own feed, but I did. There it was, a frozen photo from my security camera. A dark figure, hardly recognizable, standing next to my bed. I attempted to tell myself that it was just a trick of the light, a glitch, something logical. But then there were even more events. Things began to move while I wasn't paying attention. A glass tipped off the counter in the kitchen. My houseplants fell over. A figure flashed across the edge of my vision. And then the nightmares resumed. David was closing in. His foggy, lifeless eyes met mine. His whisper was crawling into my head like a slow toxin. You asked a third question. His small mouth curled into something that was not a smile. I woke up with a gasp, my body slick with sweat. My heart was pounding so hard I barely heard it, a tapping, faint from the ceiling. I was petrified. The noise began lightly, such as fingers passing through the plaster. Then they changed to stern, insistent knocks, sideways, scratching, right above my head. The footsteps followed, hesitant, careful, soft. Something walked around overhead, but I occupied the second story. No attic, no crawl space, just the ceiling. I ran out of the room gasping. My apartment was too small, too dark, the air too thick with something heavy and invisible. I needed out, but where could I go? I was alone. He was in my apartment. The following day, I reviewed my security footage once more. My fingers shook as I scrolled through the footage. At 3:14 a.m., the feed indicated something indefinable. The chair swayed, alone. Then, a few seconds later, a dark figure crawled across my bed. I almost dropped my phone, my heart constricted, my stomach churning with nausea. I rewound, played it again. It was real. This wasn't a dream. It wasn't my imagination. I put it up on the internet, hoping someone, anyone, would tell me what the devil was going on. The messages flooded in. Some thought it was a trick. Some were scared of me. Some told me the worst thing I didn't want to hear. He's getting stronger. The last straw was the photo. I woke up one morning, worse than ever. My entire body hurt like I'd been dragged across the floor. My head pounded, and my sheets were clammy with sweat. I extended my phone with stiff and shaking fingers. My camera roll was open, and there were photos of me, sleeping, taken during the night. And in the last one, David was there, standing in the corner, his head tilted, eyes wide, grinning. Then something even more disturbing happened. I heard a whisper, but not in my dream, not in my mind. It was real, right beside my ear. I'm still here. A shiver crept around my spine, and the room seemed to be closing in on me. I slowly turned my head, afraid of what I would see. But there was nothing, only the oppressive silence closing in on me from all sides. I dreamed that night that I was drowning. Chilly, clawing fingers encircled my ankles, dragging me down into infinite blackness. A child's voice was heard through the water. "You can't leave me." I woke up gasping, covered in unexplained bruises. My legs were sore, like something had really clutched them in the night. I moved out of that apartment, moved away, burned the chair. But even now, late at night, I catch it. The feel of eyes on me, the brush of a dead child's breath across my ear, and the touch of tiny fingers tracing out towards me in the darkness. And I know dear David is still with me. The Dear David haunting case revolves around Adam Ellis, a New York-based illustrator who gained viral attention in 2017 for sharing a chilling paranormal experience on Twitter. According to Ellis, his apartment was haunted by the ghost of a young boy with a misshapen head, whom he named Dear David. Ellis first encountered Dear David in a dream, where he was warned he could only ask 2 questions, never 3, or face dire consequences. He later claimed to see the spirit in real life, reporting eerie occurrences such as objects moving on their own, strange noises, and his cats fixating on something unseen. Over several months, Ellis documented the haunting with photos and videos, including unsettling images of what appeared to be a childlike figure. His updates captivated millions, sparking debates over whether the events were real or an elaborate hoax. Eventually, the tweet stopped, leaving followers to speculate on the story's conclusion. The Dear David phenomenon became a pop culture sensation, inspiring countless theories and discussions. In 2023, it was adapted into a horror film, further cementing its place in modern internet folklore. Whether fact or fiction, Dear David remains one of the most famous online ghost stories. Being a class teacher was something I dreamt of since I was a teenager. Dealing with kids, connecting with them, making them learn, and watching them grow has always been the best feeling. The smell of pencils and old paper filled my classroom, and the usual chatter of kids buzzed around me. Gabriel Fernandez sat in the second row, head down, scribbling in his notebook. He was quieter than the others, a little bit more reserved, but always polite, always eager to learn. I should have known. I should have seen it earlier. The first time I noticed something was off, it was his eyes. They weren't just tired, they were empty, like the light inside of him was fading. A dark bruise peeked out from under his shirt collar, yellow around the edges, like it had been there for days. When I asked him about it, he flinched, his small hands curling into tight fists. "Just fell," he whispered. A chill ran down my spine. The way he said it sounded fake, like he'd been told to say it. The next week, Gabriel came to school with a busted lip, the skin split and swollen, dried blood stuck in the corner of his mouth. His hands shook as he held his pencil, and when I handed him a tissue, he pulled back like he thought I was going to hit him.
Who did this to you?
I asked, kneeling beside him. My heart was racing, and my stomach turned. "My mom and her boyfriend," he mumbled, so quiet I almost didn't hear him. "They don't like me." A heavy feeling settled in my chest.
I can help you, Gabriel.
I whispered.
You just have to tell me everything.
His lips quivered. He glanced over his shoulder like someone was watching. "They say," he finally said, his voice cracking. "They don't want me." I clenched my fists. He was just a kid, 8 years old. How could anyone? I reported it right away. Child Protective Services said they'd look into it. But the next day, Gabriel didn't come to school, or the day after that. When he finally came back, he looked worse. His small body was thinner, his cheeks hollow, his arms. God, his arms. Cigarette burns, deep purple bruises, red welts that looked angry and raw. I couldn't breathe.
What happened?
I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. His lips were dry and cracked. "They made me eat cat litter," he said. "They made me eat rotten spinach from the trash." I ran out of the classroom, holding back tears, and called CPS again.
You need to get him out of that house. Now.
I said, my voice shaking. Ma'am, we have a lot of cases.
I don't care! They're torturing him!
They said they'd follow up. I should have done more. I should have taken him and run. Gabriel stopped talking after that. The spark in him was fading fast. Then one Monday, he came to school with 2 black eyes, the skin around them swollen and purple, his left eyelid barely open. His knuckles were raw, like he'd been scrubbing something for hours. He moved slowly, like every step hurt. I pulled him aside, whispering,
I won't let them hurt you anymore, okay? I swear.
He looked up at me, those big brown eyes full of something that scared me. Acceptance, like he knew he wasn't going to make it. 2 weeks later, Gabriel Fernandez was dead. They found him on the floor of his mom's apartment, his little body beaten and broken. I was horrified knowing the details about what Gabriel's own parents did to him. How could someone be so cruel to a child? Are they even humans? My legs trembled and my heart burned in pain. The thought that Gabriel died because of his evil parents made me question everything sane. And through it all, he still loved them. In the hospital, in his last moments, he told the nurses, "Make sure my mom's okay." I screamed when I heard. I collapsed at my desk, shaking with anger and grief. I'd begged, I'd pleaded, but the system failed him. I failed him. The trial was a mess. Izaro Aguirre, the monster who did this, sat in court with cold, dead eyes. Pearl Fernandez, Gabriel's mother, didn't cry, not once. They played the tapes of Gabriel's last moments, his cries, his begging for help, the horror he went through. I wanted to cover my ears, to forget the sounds of his pain. Aguirre got the death penalty. Pearl got life without parole, but it didn't feel like justice. Gabriel was still gone. Sometimes I dream about him. He's sitting in my classroom, head down, drawing pictures of happy families, families that would never hurt him. I wake up screaming because I know how his story really ended, and no punishment will ever be enough to make up for what they did to him. I heard his voice in my head, his last words to me, "Help me." And I didn't. I kept going over that moment, wondering what I could have done differently. Could I have gone to his house? Could I have pushed harder with the authorities? Could I have protected him from the people who were supposed to love him? The guilt eats at me, a constant weight on my chest. Gabriel's face stays with me, his eyes empty, his shaky voice, the bruises that told a story he was too scared to share. I think about the other kids in my class, the ones who laugh and play and trust the world to keep them safe. I watch them more closely now, looking for signs, for anything wrong. But no matter how many I help, it'll never be enough, because Gabriel is gone, and the world feels darker without him. The case of Gabriel Fernandez is one of the most tragic instances of child abuse in U.S. history. In 2013, 8-year-old Gabriel died after months of brutal torture by his mother, Pearl Fernandez, and her boyfriend, Izaro Aguirre, in Palmdale, California. Gabriel was beaten, starved, burned, shot with BB guns, and forced to eat cat litter. Desperate multiple reports to social services and law enforcement, authorities failed to intervene in time. On May 22, 2013, Gabriel was found unresponsive and later died in the hospital due to his severe injuries. Aguirre was sentenced to death, while Pearl Fernandez received life without parole. The case led to widespread outrage and calls for child welfare reform. Social workers involved faced criminal charges but were later dismissed. A Netflix documentary, The Trials of Gabriel Fernandez, shed light on the systematic failures that contributed to his death, sparking discussions on child protection laws.